I quietly left after discovering my wife's affair after 3.5 years of marriage. A year later, my ghosted ex-wife tracked me down. After hearing of my wife's adultery, I moved to the hills. I'm not sure why I'm writing this, but perhaps it will be helpful to someone now that the incident is over and I've moved on. After 3.5 years of marriage, I learned of my wife's affair in February 2018. I worked a contract job that occasionally required a lot of travel but also permitted me to work from home when I returned. As a director of a technical sales company, my wife held a very lucrative position. Although things had become a little strained due to her working longer and longer hours and me traveling for work, we still had what I would call a fairly excellent marriage. Background: 5 years ago, at a cookout hosted by a mutual acquaintance, I met my wife, who is now my ex. We immediately clicked after we started talking. To be honest, I felt that being with a woman who was so attractive and articulate was a huge advantage. My rough around the edges demeanor somehow appealed to her. After a few weeks of dating, we found ourselves smitten with one another. When we would meet at each other's apartments, the clothes simply flew off. After 18 months of dating, we eventually got married and moved into a large apartment while saving for a down payment on a home. Things began to change after the first 3 years of marriage. Even though I still had feelings for her, I noticed that she would argue over little matters. When I mentioned all the late hours and the increasingly regular work outings, she would grow irate. Since she had been moving up the corporate ladder, she would claim that it was a necessary component of paying the dues. At least that was her justification. She informed me that since I was also away for weeks at a time, I had no right to challenge her. In reality, I had only been taking vacations for 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks or so I assured her that I could definitely manage cutting back on my travel time. There was never a conclusion to these highly circular arguments. Looking back, I realized that I was unaware that my wife was having an affair. Aside from our declining sexual life and her persistently late work hours, I would never have suspected anything. I simply assumed that she was exhausted from her job. But being rejected so often when I tried to start a sexual relationship had taken a toll on my ego. Although she had a work mobile phone and might have been using it, I didn't witness the covert texting that I had read about in other articles. She used our spare bedroom as a home office and spent a lot of time there. Around September 2017, Kathy began returning home from work and spending the evening at a work engagement instead. This increased from 1 night per week to over 3 nights each week. Although I'm not naturally envious, she would undoubtedly be observed by others, and I'm aware that she would need to repel some of the males at her workplace. Despite working with more male CEOs than female ones, she gave off the impression that she was primarily engaged in her job. The first time I suspected she was cheating was a month prior to D-Day. Before returning home, she had made a brief stop at the supermarket. I was asked to assist her with the grocery shopping. Something pink was glinting from just beneath the front passenger seat of her automobile as I was retrieving a few items from the rear seat. It was a bra that belonged to my wife. She preferred ones from a certain clothing store, so I knew it was hers. Looking back, I can see the bra was a warning sign. She always removes her bra first, from under her clothes, when she's feeling very lustful. I'm not sure why, but when I watched this, I felt sick to my stomach right away. I couldn't understand why her bra was beneath the seat. I didn't say anything more. My heart must have been pounding so hard that I nearly passed out, because when I brought the bags back to the kitchen, Kathy asked me how I was feeling and said that I appeared to have seen a ghost. I simply ignored her remark. It took everything I had to conceal my emotions, but I did my best not to appear upset or deceived. I made the decision to try to find out whether or not she was seeing someone that night and the following day. I began to consider all the hints I could have overlooked. Other than the bra, I had no evidence. She works in an office building downtown, and we live in a reasonably big city. I made the decision to temporarily put the affair idea out of my mind and consider giving her more of my attention. I prepared a delicious meal and arranged the dining table with elegant plates, silverware, and candles one Friday after work. I purchased an arrangement of flowers and a lovely bottle of wine. I pointed out the dinner and everything I had made when she arrived as usual, breezing in after work. She apologized and said she was sorry, but she had to go to a neighborhood hangout to meet up with her coworkers. She mentioned that she needed to take a shower first but that she could have a small snack with me before she left. I guess I went utterly silent because my insides flipped on me. I won't explain the type of anger I was experiencing at the time, but I had had enough. I took my work cell phone and threw it in her backseat while she was taking a shower. I had been considering this as a means of using my own phone to find her. I walked into the kitchen after that and threw the food and flowers in the garbage. After taking a shower, she got ready and looked stunning as always. "All right, let's eat," she said. "Never mind, go out with your friends," I urged her. She asked me if I was angry after giving me a weird look. "I'm sad that you never want to do anything with me," I said. She got upset and sarcastically remarked on my short fuse while telling me to stop acting like a kid. I muttered, "Foolish me," as I stood there allowing everything to settle in. For once, I felt we should spend the evening together. She simply gave me a sly smile and stormed off. I pulled out my second phone and began following my work phone when she departed. About 20 minutes away, at the bar she often visits with her coworkers, I caught her stopping. I made the decision to go find her automobile. Indeed, it was in the parking lot of the bar. I waited to see if I could see her in my car across the street. I felt completely different, like a stalker, but I told myself that I had to calm my fear of her whereabouts. I observed her leaving the bar with a man about an hour after I got there. He had the appearance of an executive from her company. He took hold of her, drew her near, and planted a kiss on her lips. My body was totally numb, and my stomach started to clench up. They went to a different vehicle and climbed in together. When their automobile pulled out, I tried to keep up with them. You guessed it, they drove to a hotel 10 minutes away. As I stopped on the street beside the hotel, I saw them exit, holding hands, and enter. I'd seen enough. I felt foolish. I began pounding the steering wheel with my fist. That was it? Something went totally blank inside of me. I'm not sure if I had an out-of-body experience or blacked out, but as I got better, I felt like I wanted a drink. At this point, my life started on a path I never would have imagined. I simply began to drive out of town, replaying all that I had just seen. I was crying out of anger, as much as I hate to admit it. I located a pleasant little tavern on the outskirts of town, some 30 miles away, and stopped in. I ordered a drink while seated at the bar. The bartender, a lady, said that I looked like someone had taken the wind out of my sails, so I guess I looked like death warmed over. I answered, half smiling. "You could say that." A man sat down beside me and struck up a discussion. Even though I didn't feel like talking, there was something about this guy that put me at ease. We struck up a conversation, and eventually my wife's infidelity came up. I told her that all I wanted to do was get away from her and forget about her. "You're not alone, buddy," he replied, giving me a back pat after giving me a quick glance. I experienced that a few years ago. I think there's a reason why these things occur. Your life can now take a positive or negative turn, I assure you. At this point, everything is totally up to you. His remarks, for some reason, jolted me out of my gloom. Even though I was aware of my pain, I've always been able to see things rationally, and he was absolutely correct. We identified ourselves. Ray was his name. I really liked his salt-of-the-earth vibe, even though he was more of a country guy. "When are you going to move out?" he inquired. I suppose I never thought to look that far ahead. I had a fight-or-flight response going on, and I knew I didn't want to be around this woman any longer. "I have an idea and I feel very sympathetic to your situation," Ray added. "When the time comes, I have a mobile trailer on my land in case you feel the need to go. It might require some work and isn't very good. Why don't you visit and see if you could imagine yourself briefly residing in anything like that? I'll give you a terrific bargain on it, at least. You could even park it on a lovely piece of property I own. I would appreciate it if you could watch it for me. It could be beneficial to escape your predicament, just a thought." I took a moment to comprehend his concept. "Hell, honey, if I could have escaped my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to go live in his trailer or anything just to get my head on straight," added the bartender, who had been listening in on the chat. Perhaps this was just what I needed, but I felt as though I had wandered into the twilight zone. "Yes, I'll think about it and maybe check it out," I said to Ray. After a while, we split up and agreed to get together at his house in a few days. I began to feel as though I had some perspective and an opportunity to escape what I thought was a terrible heartache combined with a nightmare. I knew one thing for sure: I would never, ever want to spend time with my wife again. I find cheating to be so disgusting, and it has always been the one thing I thought I would never put up with. I sat on the couch when I arrived home that evening after Kathy. Kathy asked me where I had been when she came out. "Where have you been?" I questioned, turning to face her. "You know I went to grab drinks," she said. I directly inquired, "Are you having an affair?" She appeared surprised, but she soon collected herself and responded, "No, why would you ask me that?" I informed her that I had heard she might be seeing someone at work. "Who told you that?" she said. "Someone I know," I said, but I kept the name a secret. After saying, "You're being ridiculous," she accused me of being intoxicated and insane and inquired about my whereabouts. "We're going to a bar to enjoy some drinks with our friends," I remarked. Despite her obvious desire to ask more questions, she returned to our bedroom and went to bed. Now that I had proof that she had been deceiving me for months, I made the decision to sleep on the sofa. I couldn't sleep at all because I kept seeing her in bed with this guy. I felt sorry for myself, disgusted, and hurt. But then I thought about Ray's trailer. The thought of it cheered me up, and it was almost like a revelation. Something must be wrong with me since the fight or flight response automatically activated amid the pain I was experiencing, and I preferred the flight response. We didn't talk much the following morning and carried on with the weekend as if nothing had occurred. I scheduled a meeting with Ray a few days later. I noticed that Ray had a lovely ranch when I got there, and the trailer was actually quite nice, about 26 feet long and fully furnished. It brought back memories of a fun spring break trip I took with pals while I was in college. Ray accepted the money I offered him for the trailer. To be honest, I almost took it from him. I drove over to see his ranch property after he gave me directions. There were hiking and biking paths close by, and the area was lovely, with lots of trees and scrub vegetation. Ray had a little cabin on a hilltop overlooking the property, with electricity and water accessible for the trailer, and it was close to the foothills of some mountains. Ray promised to set up the trailer for me and pull it to the location. I tried to get Kathy to come clean over the course of the following few weeks, but all I got was gaslighting. I even bluntly warned her that there would be no turning back if I discovered she was cheating. As a result, she became even more engrossed in her affair fog, and began to lash out at me with denials. I nearly laughed at how awful the denial was. I scolded myself for not capturing pictures of the two of them, and I had no tangible evidence that she had cheated. I decided that I wanted to leave this marriage after going through this emotional anguish. Instead of communicating my feelings to Kathy, I simply began planning. While she was at work, I started quietly removing my possessions from the apartment and transferring them to the trailer. At least I felt like I was doing something about it. I saw a difference in Kathy during this period. Although she had been behaving more politely toward me, I believed it was too little, too late. I felt I needed a break too, so she kept going on company outings, after work. One night, I got ready too, just as she was leaving. After glancing at me, she inquired about my destination. All I said was, meeting up with some friends. You wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk, and you don't know them? I interrupted her as she began to ask more questions. She used to say precisely this to me whenever I asked if I might accompany her on office excursions. All right, have a good time, she added, with a somewhat offended expression. I definitely will, I replied. I began making new acquaintances while working on the trailer and hanging out with Ray at the bar. I felt better after spending time with Ray's wonderful family and friends. I also made the decision to cut back on my drinking because I didn't want to form any unhealthy habits. I knew better than to drown myself in sympathy, even though it would have been so simple. At this point, Kathy informed me that the next week she would be traveling for work. She stated the executive team and a few department heads were going when I inquired who was going. I hope you have a great time with your boyfriend, I added, glancing at her. I immediately regretted saying that because it sparked a furious argument. Although, as Ray had informed me, it didn't really matter, I now regret not knowing more about her affair partner, AP. It doesn't matter who the other guy is, Ray replied. The fact that she chose to leave you is all that matters. She destroyed the marriage. Whether she admits it or not, brother, facts are facts. Ray ought to write a book for the betrayed. Damn it. I had the ideal opportunity to move out entirely during Kathy's work vacation. When she was gone, I collected everything valuable that was mine, including clothes, laptops, and equipment. I didn't take any shared goods or furniture. I left a note before I left. It was a lengthy explanation at first, but I chose to make it brief. I wrote, I hope it was worth it on a piece of paper. On top of the note on the kitchen table, I set my wedding ring. I felt like a great weight had been lifted as I left. I was liberated. The hurt would take time to heal, and there would be baggage to cope with, but I had started. I needed time to myself and to swiftly and quietly get rid of her. The fact that I hadn't challenged her or coerced a confession didn't make me proud. I hadn't screamed or shouted. She didn't deserve it, in my opinion. She disregarded everything we owned, including our plans for the future, our aspirations for a home and a family, and now it was all gone. There was no turning back. I owed her absolutely nothing. She could handle the consequences. I hadn't planned anything or called a lawyer. I just wanted a new beginning and some clarity. The air from the mountains was just what I needed when I got inside my trailer. I resumed running the next week, and it was wonderful to be alive. Kathy texted things like, "We just landed," "We're having a team dinner," and so on while she was away. "Where are you?" was the question in a few mails. "Why haven't you gotten back to me?" I didn't answer. My phone exploded with calls and texts when she got home. She kept trying to get in touch with me, but I ignored her. Her mother also tried to phone me after the first day, but I didn't pick up. She didn't try to engage my father because we aren't close and he is the only member of my family that I still have. Her messages grew more urgent after she was ignored for a week. "What is this?" was one of the texts she sent. "We must speak. I'm not sure what you believe you know, but nothing is happening. There isn't an affair going on." She finally texted me after a week of not answering, saying, "I'm sorry things got out of hand. It didn't matter that I was involved with someone at work. You were absent a lot while I was preoccupied with my work. I simply made an error. I intended to terminate it." An error? I had been waiting for this confession all along, yet somehow it only made me detest her more. Why was she unable to be truthful? I didn't have any dreams about a future with this woman. Errors don't persist for 6, 8, or a year. Her pleas for me to return and work on the marriage eventually grew pitiful. I refused to respond to her even after she stopped bothering me for a few weeks. I didn't want her to learn where I lived or to snoop around in my life. I didn't want my haven to be destroyed by this woman. She then began sending nasty texts like, "You're a coward one day. You refuse to speak to me. You have no regard for us. Come home, please, so we can discuss. You're where? I am able to visit you. Paul, please let's chat and make things right. Damn it." Although I don't recall all of the texts, they all appeared to be excuses with minimal genuine regret. In one ear, I let them go, and in the other out. After a while, I switched my mobile number. Update: June 2018. I received an email from Kathy informing me that she had hired a lawyer and was going to file for divorce. I just said, "Okay, that sounds good." This led to a barrage of emails requesting that I visit her and other things. She wrote that she would stop bothering me if I consented to an uncontested divorce after realizing this wouldn't work. After I consented, I was genuinely free a few months later. After I moved out of our apartment, I never had to see her again. She seemed to care more about that than I did, even though neither of us had any closure. I would occasionally think of her for a few months, and yes, the grief would suddenly come to me, like when I heard a song we used to enjoy. After a while though, I simply stopped thinking about her. Update 2. Now that I'm officially divorced, things are going great. In actuality, I got to know a wonderful girl. Just down the hill from my house, I was running on the trail. We clicked when I helped her replace a flat tire. Despite being a few years younger than me, she is fantastic and quite adorable. She refers to me as her mountain man, and adores my way of life. Although I'm not in a rush to commit, I also don't intend to give up on women entirely. I have no intention of moving out of the trailer anytime soon. I enjoy being outside and have simplified my life. It made everything easier for me, including the grief and my ex-wife. I am aware that everyone responds to these situations in a unique way. I was fortunate to be in my 3rd year of marriage and not yet a parent. I believe I acted in my own best interests. You don't have to spend your entire life with someone who cheats. If you experience something similar, try not to think about it too much. Continue living your life. As you improve yourself, it will get better. I hope everyone has the finest possible life. I've revised this roughly 5 times to make it readable, and I just wanted to give you an update on my ex-wife's condition. I was worried that my ex-wife was attempting to find me, as I indicated in my earlier post. I left our previous residence, which was around 2 hours away. I ran into her last weekend at a coffee shop I often visit in the town close to my home. It didn't seem like a coincidence to me. Fortunately, I managed to get away before she noticed me. Third update: I went into town this past weekend to get groceries and made a stop at my normal coffee establishment. I was utilizing their free internet to work on some paperwork for work. I finished and walked out of the coffee shop. I was on my way to my pickup when I heard someone shout, "Paul!" When I turned to look across the street, I saw Kathy. I was being waved at by my ex-wife. Finally, Armageddon had arrived. She hurried across the street toward me, and I stood there in disbelief. As though anticipating an embrace, she walked over and extended her hand. I stopped her in her tracks by instinctively holding out my arms with my palms up. She appeared to be in severe pain. Then she added, "I've been searching for you, Paul. I've wanted to see you since I heard you moved here. Can we have a conversation?" Guys, I felt like an animal confined in a cage. Yes, I did. "All right, let's find a table or something and we can talk for a minute," I finally gave in. When she asked if we could come to my house, I firmly refused. At the end of the street, she trailed me down to a bench outside a small store. She began by remarking on how much I had changed and how much she liked my new appearance, beard, and level of fitness. She raved about how much my body had changed. Wearing a tank top, small white shorts, and her hair in a ponytail, just like I used to enjoy, she was really putting on the charm. I had my radar set high. She was clearly attempting to activate the sex appeal. I needed to control myself so I could see where this was headed. She began by saying she was sorry about the affair. She claimed that after I left, karma had severely impacted her. When her employer learned of the affair, the situation became so tense that she eventually resigned. Her affair partner AP, who at the time was engaged, received criticism and was transferred to a different department within the organization. She replied by telling his fiancé the truth after he blamed her for everything, which caused them to split up. This is when she bowed her head and began to weep. I didn't say anything, I just sat there and looked around. She stood up straight and looked at me for a while. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She assured me that she had no intention of having an affair. She stated that the company's politics and positioning drew her in, and that her AP used his charm and influence to corrupt her. She acknowledged that she felt she was taking advantage of him as much as he was taking advantage of her. After I accused her of cheating, she stated that she intended to come clean. She drank after work to ease the guilt she felt at the moment because she loathed herself. She claimed that she felt so stupid, so alone, and as like her heart had burst with loss immediately after I departed. She ended her relationship with her AP right away. She believed she had to find me to see if there was any chance of reconciliation because I refused to speak with her or get in touch with her. She desired a fresh start. She hoped we could start afresh even though she knew we were divorced. I simply gazed at her. I then gave it to her. "You have no right to come out here and undo all the harm you have done. Do you think I'll overlook everything you did to destroy our union? As I previously stated, we were done if you cheated. Forgiveness does not exist. This relationship will not be restarted. You murdered it. As soon as you left me, you ruined everything we had. How foolish do you believe me to be? One evening, I watched you enter a hotel with him. Were you aware of that?" I became aware that people were beginning to notice that my voice had been getting louder. She grabbed my arm and started crying. After letting her sob on my shoulder for a while, I pushed her away. "I deserve all this," she replied, glancing up at me. "I am certain that I do. If nothing else, would you allow me to take you out to dinner? I'd rather not go. I would like to speak further. I want to make sure that we are transparent about everything. You need to spend more time with me than you have in the past. Paul, please. I love you so much, even though I know you might not want to hear it. Before you left me, I had no idea how much I loved you. You broke me as much as I broke you. I'm unable to forgive myself, and I don't want to do so till the day I pass away." She began to sob uncontrollably and hyperventilate. I lifted her up and gave her a hug. It seemed like my only option for soothing her. I knew then that I had shattered her heart as severely as she had shattered mine. Walking, we found a peaceful spot to carry on our conversation. I said, "How did you find me?" when she had calmed down. "Have you engaged a private investigator?" After giving it some thought, she responded no with a small giggle. She clarified that she asked how things were going when she ran into Stacy a few weeks prior. Stacy didn't mention that she had noticed me. Kathy forced her to reveal all the information. I had warned Stacy not to tell her, so she was reluctant, but Kathy persisted. Stacy finally gave in, but all she knew was that I lived somewhere close by and was in town. On her days off, she began to come here to check on me. I kind of laughed when she said that, thinking, damn, Stacy can't keep her trap shut. She blushed. We ultimately decided to have dinner at a charming little spot with a patio. I made sure we didn't drink anything since I wasn't going to give her a reason to be kind to me or say she wasn't so inebriated that she couldn't drive back. In fact, we had a good conversation. I then escorted her to her vehicle. She insisted that she hadn't dated anyone else since I left and vowed fervently that I was the only person she wanted, so she pushed me hard to stay longer. "No, it's still way too early for me to go down that road," I informed her. She pleaded with me to come back, but I didn't say yes. After giving her my new email address, I didn't say anything more. My response to her request for my phone number was, "You'll just blow it up with texts and calls." She wept over it, but in the end, she agreed with my choice. She promised to send me an email with information on returning to town the following weekend before she left. I asked her directly, "Would you have forgiven me if I had been the one cheating?" before she got into her car. "Yes, in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor and worked through the healing process with lots of talking, maybe even a binding agreement," she responded after pausing to reflect. "All right, maybe I could do that. In 5 or 10 years, I answered. "I would wait if that's what it would take," she replied. She then took both of my hands in hers, looked me in the eye and said, "God damn it, Paul, I will always love you and will do anything to prove it." This statement truly caught me off guard. Her remarks continued to upset me even after she left. She had spoken those words so firmly. However, I was still unable to envision us reuniting. Even though I felt better about the incident, I was unable to perceive her as a friend at this time. Perhaps a friend, but even that was a mystery. I returned home, enjoyed a long run, had some beer, and thought about how far I had come. Could someone please assure me that she wouldn't destroy the tranquility I had created for myself? I had no idea. I had the luxury of time to sort through it and get perspective, but it was all still too vivid in my mind. Last update. Most likely, this will be my final update. When I first uploaded my story to Reddit, the moderators kept taking it down. In summary, I ghosted my ex-wife for more than a year before she discovered me. She wanted to make amends and start over with us. You will be deeply disappointed if you thought I would be the typical beta blue pill fool and forgive her. She expressed her love and regret for the affair in a lengthy email she sent me last week. She offered to come out and stay with me for the weekend once more. My answer? I silenced her. I informed her that I had no plans to make amends with her. I'm totally happy living alone, taking advantage of my secluded position, and keeping things simple. At 32, I'm not in a rush to make changes. I have my own self-determination plan and have enjoyed the company of a few women and friends. I made it clear in my email response that I had no intention of reconciling and declined to provide her with my phone number. I no longer know or trust you because you made your bed. I hope the best for you, and perhaps we might become friends in the future, but not right now. She was annoyed by my evasiveness and responded in a telling way. She acknowledged that she had taken a job offer from a different state. Her true goal had been for me to accompany her, believing that my remote work would make the move simple. She wished we could start over somewhere new. She wanted to visit me in person to attempt to persuade me because she was running out of time before moving. Luckily for me, her time was up because I had a week of business travel scheduled. I'm grateful. I will no longer have her in my life. She will soon recognize that her time with me is over, but I anticipate receiving a few more emails. She'll need to find someone else, and she might even cheat on them. To anyone reading this, make the most of your life. Let go of the past and give yourself the strength to go on. To all of you, good luck. I opened my marriage, lost my husband, and now I'm fighting to win him back. Is it too late? I'm here to seek guidance on how to save my remaining marriage. Let me begin by stating that I have been with my spouse for 7 years, and we have been married for 5 of those years. I'll call us Skylar and James for privacy's sake. In our second year of community college, we got to know one another. James went on to receive a 4-year degree in business administration from a university that provides remote programs at the community college, while I obtained a 2-year degree in office management. In the present, James is 27 and I am 26, and we intended to have a child later this year. Having 4 children, ideally 2 boys and 2 girls, was our desire. Both of our families loved us, and we had a really happy marriage. This is where I made a big error. I formed a relationship with a delivery driver for one of the 3 major delivery companies, which some could refer to as a work-husband relationship. To keep things private, I'll call him Jaden. Jaden has been delivering to my office for about 2 years at the age of 25 and unmarried. Unquestionably, we clicked right away. It wasn't romantic, but there was a spark that pulled me to him. Every time he made a delivery, we would converse for at least 10 minutes. I started to look forward to seeing him and always made sure to be honest with him when he showed up. Our chat went farther than normal one day. Jaden said he wanted to ask me a personal question. He said he didn't want to offend me or endanger our business relationship because it was so personal. I encouraged him to ask and reassured him that was okay. I feel a very strong attraction to you and wondered if you felt it too, he admitted at that point. His audacity shocked and embarrassed me. After giving it some thought, I confessed that I felt it as well. Jaden continued by saying that if I weren't married, he would have asked me out. The conversation ended when I thanked him for the compliment. That was the last of him. Our conversations grew awkward and short throughout the course of the following week. I was so ashamed that I thought I had gone too far. Even as James and I continued to enjoy our married lives at home, the guilt persisted. To be clear, I have always been totally happy with James as a husband, friend, and lover. I thought he would have said the same of me at the time. For me, he was ideal. Nevertheless, I mistakenly started to dream about having both my devoted husband and a relationship with Jaden that went beyond business chats. Later, I discovered that this is frequently called eating cake. Intrigued, I began reading up on open marriages and polyamory. I initially thought the concept was nasty and ridiculous. I was certain James would not consent, and even if he did, I wanted to prevent our marriage from being harmed and our family from becoming estranged. Weeks went by, and my married life was still great. But there were still thoughts of Jaden. I came upon a blog article by a lady in an open marriage with the heading "It Doesn't Hurt to Ask," when I went back to the subject. She talked about how she sought a relationship with a man she met while volunteering, even though she loved her spouse. After 2 years of suppressing her emotions, she finally asked her husband on a lengthy drive. He was interested, which surprised her. 4 years later, they apparently had a stronger, happier connection after opening their marriage and finding other lovers. Because it mirrored exactly what I wanted but was too scared to question James about, her tale struck a chord with me. Then, one Sunday morning, I made the decision to bring up the topic as we were relaxing at home, conversing and using our phones to browse the internet. "I just read this online post about open marriages," I said immediately to James. "How do you feel about them?" "Are you talking about couples sleeping with other people?" he questioned, glancing at me. I reaffirmed and inquired about his thoughts once again. In response, James said he found it repulsive and added that if someone wanted to sleep together, they should simply seek a divorce. I said, "It's really becoming popular here in the US and other Western countries," in an attempt to defuse the situation, but his expression made it obvious that he was disgusted by the subject, so I quickly changed the topic. His response made me decide that I would never bring it up again since I didn't want to endanger our marriage, which I thought was fantastic. A few weeks later, James and I were snuggling in bed together, enjoying the glow from a fantastic evening. He remarked abruptly, "Who did you have in mind when you brought up open marriages last week?" As I lay on his chest, unable to see his face, I went cold. I gently lifted my head to look at him, and a pit developed in my stomach. "What are you discussing? What are you saying?" I stumbled. James clarified that he has read studies indicating that a woman's reference to an open relationship with her boyfriend frequently indicates that she has previously cheated or has another lover in mind. I was shocked by what he said. In fact, I was shaken to my very core. James remarked, "I know you too well," after realizing the effect of his comments. "Just be honest, I can tell you're hiding something." I could have stopped there, but instead I remained silent, turned my head away, and finally told him, "I have never cheated on you and would never do so. Rather, I acknowledged that there was someone at work I may think about if we ever discussed an open marriage." "Tell me about this work friend," James insisted. I reluctantly started to describe Jaden and our encounters, including the moment he revealed his emotions for me. I didn't reveal, though, that I felt the same way about it. I was frightened by James's next statement. "You know, technically, you've already cheated on me." I retaliated defensively, saying, "I haven't cheated." "Your relationship with this Jaden guy is what's known as an emotional affair," James retorted. James gave me an explanation of the term because I had never heard it before. I listened in frustration as he explained the workings of emotional affairs. James finally proposed that we end the conversation since he needed to go to bed because he had an early start the next day. I couldn't fall asleep, but he did. Rather, I picked up my phone and began looking up emotional affairs. What James had asserted was supported by article after article. My relationship with Jaden was more than simply an emotional one. It was a full-fledged one. I was overcome with guilt. I felt like I had let my hubby down. I went downstairs to make myself some tea because I couldn't sleep, and at around 4 a.m, I fell asleep on the couch. James kissed me awake at 6:45 a.m. "I'm heading out for work," he declared. As usual, I kissed him back and told him I loved him, but this time, with guilt weighing heavily on my mind, I made it clearer than ever. "You should start your day. It's almost 7 a.m. After making love for a few days, we were laying in bed once more when James abruptly remarked, "If you truly want to, I'd be willing to try an open marriage." "Why are you bringing this up now?" I questioned, stunned. He clarified that he had been considering our earlier chats and reasoned that if it was something we wanted, we should attempt it while we were still young. I pledged never to endanger our marriage or our love, but I did show cautious attention. I told him, "You are the most significant person in my life. If our love bond is strong, it will withstand infidelity," James retorted. James didn't respond when I retorted, "A mutual open relationship wouldn't be considered infidelity because we'd both agree to it. Consider our marriage open, starting right now," he remarked instead. Surprised again, I told him to calm down and that we needed to set ground rules. He made the following specifics. We had to let people know ahead of time who we would be sleeping with and when. We had to later, without going into graphic detail, tell each other about the incident. There are no exceptions to the rule that all types of closeness must be protected. I accepted his conditions and suggested a few more. We would maintain the privacy of our open marriage. We would pledge to stay together and prevent these adulterous affairs from ruining our marriage. James declared that he was unable to accept either of these terms. He refused to talk about it more and just said he didn't and wouldn't agree to them when I questioned why. I was worried since this felt totally out of character for James. I snuggled up to him in spite of my discomfort, and we dozed off. I became uncomfortable with the idea of an open relationship throughout the course of the following month because I thought James might be up to something. I chose not to pursue it and concentrated on leading a typical life. I avoided talking to Jaden at work during this time, limiting our exchanges to trivial subjects like the weather or our respective workloads. Then, one day, Jaden asked me if something was wrong and said he truly missed our discussions. I explained to him that I didn't have much time to talk because I was so busy at work and at home. I contemplated whether or not to disclose my open marriage to him. I eventually made the decision to tell him how I wish I could take that choice back. I asked Jaden to join me for a drink after work because it didn't seem acceptable to have such a chat there. He concurred. We got together at a neighborhood tavern with a terrace outside, which was ideal for the warm early spring weather. I asked him directly whether he would be interested in a relationship after telling him about my newly announced marriage. Without hesitation, he said yes. Although he respected my boundaries, Jaden acknowledged that he had been waiting for me to change his mind and that he had been dreaming about me for months. We talked flirtatiously most of the time that night. We decided to have our first romantic meeting at his flat the next day. I made it clear that I had to depart by 6:30 p.m. to go back home to James, who was still my top priority. I came home that evening and made James a delicious meal. After supper, I told him about my conversation and meeting with Jaden earlier in the day, and that we had planned to meet at his apartment the next day, assuming James was still okay with us being married in an open marriage. Despite appearing surprised, James answered, "Oh, yes, all right, so you're meeting him tomorrow?" As my top focus was him and our relationship, I reassured him that we could still cancel if he so desired. "No," he insisted. "Let's do this." In contrast to our typical embraces, I felt hardness and remoteness in his. I blamed it on nerves. We didn't speak much that night as I concentrated on my own work and James worked in his office. I tried to start an intimate conversation with him before we went to bed, but he stated he was too exhausted and wanted to relax. When I woke up the following morning, James had already left, leaving a text message saying that he had neglected to mention an early meeting. He also mentioned that he would see me that evening. This was not like him, but I brushed it off and went about my day as usual, dressing and going to work. I picked a really lovely clothing that day because I knew I was going out with Jaden after work. I texted James throughout the day, but he didn't reply. I contemplated calling off our date with Jaden, but I now regret not doing so. I got a text from James at 4:17 p.m. He promised to meet me that evening and wrote that he loved me. I was relieved by this, and I saw it as his approval to proceed. I'll get right to the point. When Jaden and I first met, our private moment was fierce. There was clearly no love involved, and it wasn't quite as satisfying as it is with James. But because of the unlawful nature of what we were doing and the pure passion, it was physically satisfying. After an hour and a half, I left Jaden's residence and got home shortly after 6:40 p.m. I was shocked to see that James wasn't home yet. I was relieved since it allowed me to take a shower and wash my clothes to get rid of the smell of Jaden's perfume. Despite my physical sense of fulfillment, I was overcome with regret, guilt, and shame. I felt soiled, as though I had violated every fundamental principle in my marriage. I was really anxious, and it was a mental tug-of-war. I made a short but beautiful meal and put candles to create a romantic atmosphere since I was determined to make it up to James. I wanted him to understand how much I loved him and that the sexual relationship with Jaden was meaningless because it was only physical and couldn't compare to the happiness and love I had with James. My hope was that we would make love at the end of the evening. James was still away from home around 7:30 p.m. When I tried to call him, the call went straight to voicemail. I texted him to let him know that dinner was ready when I got home. When I didn't hear back by 8:50 p.m., I became concerned. I kept phoning and texting him, leaving messages, but I never heard back. At last, at approximately 9:30 p.m., James texted me, saying, "Don't wait up. I will arrive home late." He didn't respond when I texted him back to inquire where he was and who he was with. I finally dozed off after midnight, emotionally and physically spent. The sound of the shower running in the guest bathroom awakened me up. When I went up to look, I saw that the door was locked, which was completely out of character for James. He did not answer when I knocked. After 10 minutes, James came out, wrapped in a towel, and said nonchalantly, "Hey, how was your night?" After I assured him that everything was okay, he asked me straight out, "Did you have sex with Jaden?" I winced at his directness and urged him to use a different wording. I reluctantly said, "Yes, Jaden and I were together." I then inquired about his whereabouts. James confessed that he had gone out dancing and spent the night at multiple pubs. Because I could smell perfume on his clothing, I was suspicious and questioned who he was with. Upon pressing, I inquired, "Who is she?" He said that he didn't have to identify her because they hadn't shared a bed. Although I was astonished by what he said, I was more offended by his tone and language. James's angry remarks caused me great concern, although he never used profanity when addressing me. I then questioned him about why he had taken a shower in the guest bathroom. He told me icily that until I had completed 2 STD tests, he would be utilizing the guest bathroom and bedroom. I was devastated by his statements. "This wasn't part of our rules," I objected. "I ensured that Jaden wore protection during all of our activities." "Have you never heard of oral HPV or herpes?" James shot back. "Till you're cleared, I won't come within 6 feet of you." Think of this as my personal take on social distancing. I informed James that I wanted to end our marriage right now since I was so distraught and crying. I cried, "This is the last thing I wanted to happen." "No way," James shot back. "I'll have my turn now that you've taken yours." James only stated that he was going to bed since he had an early meeting and needed rest, even though I started crying more. I sobbed on the couch for the majority of the night before dozing off. When I opened my eyes, James was gone. I tried contacting him during the day, but he didn't pick up. He texted me, saying, "Don't wait up for me." I left voicemails and texted, but nobody answered. I felt like I was going crazy because I knew I had probably ruined my marriage. I didn't see Jaden at work that day as there were no deliveries. But I gave him a call at 4:30 p.m. and inquired about our possibility of meeting that night. He acknowledged that I sounded agitated. I told him I wanted to break up with him when we first met, acknowledging that it was a big mistake. I admitted that I just wanted my husband because I loved him. He understood, and all he wanted for was one more connection. Other than that, he would only ever speak to me at work. I consented, and our brief and unremarkable hookup lasted less than 10 minutes and consisted just of a basic posture. Jaden later said to me, "That was awful." I apologized, acknowledging that the entire affair was a tremendous error and not his fault. "You just laid there like a tree trunk." After getting ready and giving him one last hug, I turned to depart. I asked Jaden, bewildered, what he meant when he said, "I'll never understand women like you," before I left, but he just muttered, "Nothing, no comment," with a look of utter hatred on his face. I hurried off, sobbing all the way home. How was I able to be so foolish? I had ruined my marriage for nothing at all. I felt filthy once more and thought I was the world's most foolish person. It was 1 a.m. when James finally returned home. That evening, I was tired of knowing that I was the only one responsible for ruining my life. James did the same thing on Friday, leaving before I woke up and texting me, "Don't wait up for me." The coldness and distance between us broke my heart. I missed our mornings, evenings, and weekends together, cooking together, going on walks after supper, and chatting about random topics. I sorely missed it when it was all gone. I sent James a text message requesting to speak with him the following morning. "All right," he said, "as long as it's first thing." I asked him where he was going, but he didn't respond. "I'm leaving for the day." It was 1:30 a.m. when he returned home. I just lay in bed and sobbed without saying anything. Without saying anything, James immediately went to bed after taking another shower in the guest bathroom. The following morning, I got up early to await his arrival. He entered the kitchen, poured himself some orange juice, and sat at the table, looking at his phone, at 7 in the morning. The atmosphere was lifeless and icy. I approached him, sat on his knee, and whispered, "Look at me." He looked away, but I gently took hold of his face and met his brown eyes. I said, "You have my undying love. I really apologize for the poor choice I made, not a mistake, but a decision. I will stop at nothing to win back your love and trust." James remained silent while staring at me as if I were crazy. I pleaded, "Are you still in love with me?" He said, "I'm not sure." I sobbed and begged, "I can put this right." He said, "I don't think you can." I said in a fit of rage, "You orchestrated everything. Didn't you set me up for divorce?" James denied it but acknowledged that, based on what he had read, he realized our relationship was probably finished the moment I raised the subject of an open marriage. I questioned him, "Why didn't you just tell me to stop talking to Jaden?" I was devastated by his response. "You can't make someone be faithful. You are either monogamous or not, and it is clear that you are not." He just got up and stated he was going, despite my entreaties not to ruin our marriage. He said he would return after midnight when I questioned where he was going. "Tomorrow is Easter Sunday," I told him. "Our scheduled departure time is 7 a.m. Go visit the home of my parents. We spend every holiday with them because they adore you. James replied icily, I'm not going. What am I supposed to tell my parents? I begged him to come, shocked. Tell them the truth, he added with a shrug. He packed a gym bag and left the house without saying anything more, despite my repeated pleas for him to stay. I feel totally deflated and ruined inside. I would appreciate any guidance or recommendations regarding actions I can take to keep my marriage intact. I'm particularly interested in hearing from those who have had similar situations with open marriages and whether or not a couple can move over such a betrayal. After an open relationship, have you been able to successfully reconcile? I appreciate you hearing my tale. I'm going to bed now so I can spend the rest of the day crying. First update. I would want to express my gratitude to everyone who replied with comments and encouragement. I was able to get through the past several days because to it. Many individuals properly chastised me and called me derogatory things, but I deserve it, and I also value your opinions. 2 of the worst days of my life have been Easter Sunday and today. When I pulled up to my parents' house, they asked me right away, "Where's James?" I lied to them and said he couldn't make it because of an emergency at work. I didn't want the family get-together to be disturbed. At first, my family believed my tale, but as the day wore on, they began to suspect that I wasn't phoning or texting my husband as I usually do. I sent multiple phony texts and claimed to have responses from James, assuring everyone he was still busy at work and would give me a call tomorrow in order to allay their suspicions. To be honest, he never texted or called, not even to see whether I had made it safely. I was devastated by this. On Monday, I had intended to spend the night at my parents' house and discuss our marital issues with them. I was afraid they would be angry and despise me if I did this. I told them this morning, and everything went exactly as I had expected. They shouted at me, called me horrible names, and said that I wasn't brought up this way. When my sister was summoned over, she started to lash out at me as well. I told them I realized what I had done was horrible and sobbed. I promised them that I had grown from the experience and would never do the same thing again. I informed them that regaining James' love and trust would be my only priority going forward. Ultimately, they told me they loved me and would pray for our marriage to be saved, even if they were furious with me. On Monday night, I took a car home. I texted and called James during the day, but he didn't respond. He had gone to Florida to see his parents and would be back on Sunday, according to a note on the counter when I got home. We had arranged to go there together in early May, so I felt terrible. Now that strategy is shattered because of me. I despise myself. For now, that's all I have to say. I'm simply so unhappy and dejected. The fact that I'm no longer crying frightens me. Tears no longer seem worth shedding because of the depth of my hurt and regret. Second update. I didn't intend to publish again for almost a year, but I decided to offer an update because the community showed such a great deal of interest. I have some good news as well as some negative news. The first piece of terrible news is that I'm divorced. Back in December, it was decided. James ultimately came to the conclusion that he couldn't stay married to me once I started seeing another man. He claimed that he was ashamed to be seen with me in public and that he would never be able to trust me again. He claimed that he regained his masculinity after the divorce. I disagree. He never lost his manhood, and only our families are aware of my brief relationship with Jaden. Well, anything. The good news, no, the amazing news, is that last month James and I resumed our dating life. It's been great since Valentine's Day, when we reconnected. Our passion level is unmatched, much higher than when we initially started dating 7 years ago, but we only see each other when he wants to, which has been around once a week. James has stated unequivocally that this is merely a physical matter and that we will never again be a couple, get married, or live together. I'll take what I can get, but I'm not really comfortable with this. I want to get James back. I would like to have his children if I am unable to achieve that. I wouldn't baby trap him, so don't get me wrong. All I want is to have kids with him. Without getting married, I've considered how we could divide custody and still work things out. I don't want children with anybody else, even though I know it seems weird, but I love him. I understand that doing this would probably put any future relationships I might have with other men in jeopardy, but I only want James. That's all I have to say for now, and until something significant occurs, I doubt I'll post again. However, I would adore hearing your thoughts about my predicament. Do you believe that my decision to date James is insane? Is it better for me to go on and find someone else to start a family with? P.S. Jaden has never been an option. I simply made a poor choice with him, and I will never do it again. Thank you. We couldn't save our 15-year marriage, because my wife friend-zoned me and wants a platonic companionship. My wife, 35F, and I, 35M, Have been married for 15 years and we've been together for 20 years. We have 2 kids, 12, 14. We absolutely adore and work tirelessly to provide the best possible life for them. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a ton of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurriculars, and I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll that can have on marriages. However, for these past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy and very little sex, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and by far the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much. We essentially became roommates, co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and very demoralizing. It was to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very dark and gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individualized therapy and couples therapy, and it seems to have helped some. Little by little we started to get along and started to have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife started to tell me she no longer was in love with me, and that she only saw me as a best friend. That she only loved me in a very platonic way, and this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy and let alone sex. This was very shocking to me, and quite frankly, I was devastated. I became angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I felt completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate again, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart and began to ask questions about where the root of this problem lies, and her answer was, "I don't know," and that, "I have built up resentment towards you, but I don't know where it stems from." As you can imagine, this provides very little to no insight into how to approach this. I'm puzzled, I'm frustrated, and I do not know what to do at this point. Currently, we've arrived at a place where she says that she has no sex drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do, or what is it about me that is so unattractive or undesirable, and her response is always, "I don't know." She stated that she does love me, but it's not the same. That she has been feeling disconnected for years, and that our marriage just takes up too much work. Her focus is only the children for now, and that my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. I'm at a loss, and I'm mainly venting about my frustration. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like at this point I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. I feel like what she means with companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. In regard to intimacy and/or sex, she basically told me that it's not something she's interested in or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point for any of that is to be intoxicated, which is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I do not think forcing herself to have sex or be intimate by drinking or smoking is good, and I declined to be a part of that, which to my surprise, it upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other, and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, socials, etc. And we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else, and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things, and as expected, it was clean. We've always been very forward, even with the hard topics, so I don't smell or feel any foul play or infidelity. Am I wrong for declining to only be intimate or have sex when she's intoxicated? I'm firm on my stance of not partaking in this only when I'm high or drunk sex, because it doesn't sit well with me. I do not know how to help our situation, and I'm starting to become a bit anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young and healthy individuals and good looking. We both have good standing careers and are good parents. I'm just not sure how our lives could have driven us to this point. I'd love some outside perspective on this matter and some insight on how to address something like this. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my own spouse. I hate it. My wife of 15 plus years is no longer in love with me and doesn't know why, and now says she can only have sex while intoxicated, or I need to settle for a platonic sexless marriage, and she doesn't know why that is, but it is what it is, and I'm in need of insight or advice. Relevant comments, missing reasons. Commenters looked at his history and found they were swingers. We did some swinging in the past. That was fun for some time. We mutually decided to stop doing it, and we have established it's not the case. When we were swinging, however, our marriage seemed to be in a good place. This is something we did disclose with our couple therapist and made sure to include it to make sure we're not neglecting an obvious potential issue. I will say, I did ask my wife if what she experienced during swinging is something that is affecting her view on our relationship, and she said it wasn't. Our swinging experience was always together and it was very sex-driven. Nothing really emotional or poly. Truth is, I have to believe her at her word. I have no reason to distrust her. To date, she's always been very forward and never afraid of dealing things head on. No matter how painful. If this is a consequence of swinging, this issue existed long before the lifestyle. I agree that swinging wasn't a solution in the end. Never was meant to be. It was more of discovering or exploring if she felt any different. If that was the case, we agreed we would talk about it, and if we arrive at the conclusion that myself is the problem and she has no problem with other men, we would part ways amicably. However, this wasn't the case. She didn't like sex or intimacy there either. She was very much in control of that whole swinging situation. And yes, I went along with it. What gives? It felt very organic, and it was her effort, if you will, to discover more and learn more about our current issue. I saw it as a means of learning if I'm the problem and was very much ready to accept that. It turns out it wasn't the case. 6 years of misery sound awful. I would very much hate that. OP on if this started when the swinging ended. Finally, a comment on the swinging topic with actual insight. You're absolutely right about the fact that the swinging experience had changes that will impact our marriage and lives forever. For example, the best thing swinging taught us, even above sexual exploration, was the level of transparent and open communication it requires. We would literally have mental orgasms having dialogue with such intentionality. We implemented that in all our lives and areas, including parenting with our children. She even agrees that we're thankful for that takeaway from our swinging. Honestly, I cannot stress it enough with people here. Yes, we explored swinging. However, it was actually a positive experience. When we decided to stop, it was because it felt natural and organic to just do so. In fact, we met with that couple who we meshed super well with the night before. We actually enjoyed the actual friendship and even spent time as vanilla friends. So it wasn't because of something negative. Wife mentioned that it certainly wasn't any better, and since she's not enjoying the sex, we both agreed there's no point to this. I agreed, and we moved on, and we're still friends with those people because it's great. All that said, I know, more often than not, swinging causes massive issues. However, this was something we explored in pursuit of a solution to an issue that was present way before. I think of it as taking a practical approach to trying to solve the problem. Update 1. I wanted to give you guys an update of how the therapy session with my wife went this week. Not sure if this is helpful or not, but I took many of the responses, comments, suggestions from my initial post and put together some things I wanted to discuss with our couples therapist to help us navigate some of the core issues that may be affecting this situation. One of the main things that is the buzzword of this has been the term resentment, and it has been really eating me up inside knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or doesn't know why this is affecting her emotionally, mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long, 15 years, and being together since we were 14 years old. Our long history of growing up and how having children when she was 19 years old, me 20, significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising babies, 2 kids now ages 12 and 14. She followed up with tons of questions directly, mostly from my wife about her feelings towards this, and 90% of the responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying yes it sucked, because she would feel guilt or shame because it would imply she regrets the kids. I mentioned this in the session, and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside of the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually, and it was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated with the fact that we did miss out on many things in life. She also was very clear in saying, I do not think I missed out on other partners or dating or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends. This was huge because one of the big pieces that has caused a strain in our lives is how siloed and isolated we've been, again busy raising kids. I followed up by reminding her that it's important to have good friends and to make time for herself and her friendships. For the past 3+ years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how it is important to have them in life. Especially when you have similar peers that can help in many areas of life that perhaps we have no experience navigating, and even simply for enjoyment. It has always been something my wife avoids. Even though she's always been someone who needs that external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends or even herself has always been the kids. Like I mentioned earlier in this post, 90% of the answers have to relate to the kids to some degree. At this point in our session, I started to feel like there was a common denominator, the kids, in most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, do you think you may be upset at me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young? I wasn't ready, but she said that she was upset at me for that. She also followed up with the fact that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes two to tango. I did feel like it was progress because it kind of gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships both together and individually. Towards the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from this session. At this point, it was still all very ambiguous and blurry as to what the outcomes were. I was very direct and very forward in asking my wife what her plan is moving forward. Note, I had decided prior to the session that should my wife say the same thing about being a co-parenting roommate that I would take the 180 approach and essentially do me. She started basically saying the same thing, that she doesn't have any desire to be intimate or sexual with me as of now and that she loves me immensely and she feels bad for not being there for me, as mentioned in my first post. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which for the 50th time said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. This was something that was a mechanical approach for a solution to a problem that was very much in existence when we tried this. We, both, really have no issue with this. We know it happened, we tried it and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment and really we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the route for resentment, which was discouraging. I then basically expressed to my wife that I will not be okay with that arrangement. I told her that I've really done everything I can and that this issue really has reached a point where it has nothing to do with me or requires me to do anything that I'm currently not doing. I was very direct and said that I will not be accepting this dynamic and that I need to be with someone who is actively involved in our marriage, works towards resolutions and is very much interested in maintaining an active intimacy and sexual relationship. I expressed how I'm not going to be a convenience, and that there was more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I made sure she knows I love her dearly and that I do want this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage so long as she is as well and that if she wasn't, it's okay. However, I will not be a part of something where these efforts are not reciprocated. I told her I have no plans of leaving, and I do not want a divorce. However, I made it clear that if this dynamic continues that divorce will be the only outcome. Of course tears were involved and it was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still nothing was said and I walked out very discouraged and very determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short and cold and transactional. The saddest part is realizing, this dynamic already is very cold and transactional. Here's where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I mentioned to my wife that, hey, things are going to be a bit different moving forward. I'm going to honor her roommate co-parent dynamic without reproach and that it should be no mistake that I'm not happy here and I am never going to be okay with it, but I am done working on it if she wasn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and started to basically focus on myself. Very short and transactional. She asked for help on some of her personal things to which I declined and it really shocked her. She was upset saying I was being petulant. I explained to her that she is now fully in charge of her own life and her own issues. We didn't talk all day and we only spoke when necessary. Few days I keep this going and she's very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't this time. That night she was crying telling me she's stressed and she thinks something is wrong with me because I'm indifferent. I simply listened, then I told her that this is the dynamic she proposed and that I'm simply, much like her, taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie. It has been very hard to be cold and distant because as I mentioned before, I love her and I wish I could hold her and love on her. However, I know this is somewhat manipulative in a way just to get her way and still keep me in the friend zone. So I've been staying the course. We're now going on a week of this 180 and let's just say, there has been many changes on her side. I think she is starting to realize there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I sent her a text a few days ago essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50ths and she lost her shit. She basically told me it was out of left field, to which I responded, hey, friends go in 50-50ths and as your friend I expect nothing less. This was very eye-opening because it gave me a glimpse of how I'm really taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is really overlooked. I pushed through anyway and basically told her that this is the new dynamic she asked for and that it's still a bargain, because she would have to be 100% if she was on her own. I'll wrap up with this. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I am still very much sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements being said and realization that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side as well. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often and while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve this continues to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm very pleased seeing her be more herself. My hope is that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There really is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very much cordial and amicable even to this day, and that's a very good sign. Boundaries are set and expectations are very clear, and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapist until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. I feel like having this unbiased third party really helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a sexless, intimacy-less marriage because we both deserve better. Thank you all for all the kind words and recommendations and feedback. This will be my last post on this topic, and I wish you all the best. TLDR. My wife friend-zoned me once to just co-parent at my expense, but I started the 180 method to try and find a solution because she doesn't want to work on us, which seems to be working on getting her out of her rut and helping me discover more about how she feels. Also, therapy is paramount and highly recommended to all couples. Relevant comments. Comment 1. So, I'm going to assume that your wife has a lucrative job and you are both going 50-50ths on childcare, as you both work and share children. Because otherwise, this approach is just plain financially abusive, and if you're planning on saying I won't pay the bills unless you have sex with me, sexually abusive as well. Assuming that is the case and you aren't a total POS, I'm actually interested in how this works out for you. I feel like I'm in an unstated, similar situation. We both work and have blended finances, but we don't go to bed together or eat together, have barely any intimacy, a kiss or two, hugs every couple days, and spend maybe 8 hours a week together, just the three of us, him, me, and the toddler. Even less, just the two of us, maybe 3 hours a week. Otherwise, he is on his game, or out playing sports, watching YouTube, or whatever else he does. It barely feels like a friend situation, let alone a marriage. I'm curious how she handles it, as the spouse that presumably was pulling away first. I hope you keep us updated. OP, yes, we both have degrees, good careers, and while I make significantly more money, her salary is very proficient and above average. The 50-50ths was not to cripple nor hurt her financially, that is cruel, but mostly to send a message on what a roommate dynamic looks like in the real world. I really dislike how people immediately jump to conclusions about the finances as a way of manipulating her. It's not the case at all. Plenty of money left over after bills. However, 50-50ths means she has less whatever money, and the understanding that roommates share everything equally. Prior to this 180 approach, we did everything together and with our kids. We always saw ourselves as a unit that does things together. Both alone and with the kids too. That's changed now, where I'm choosing to focus on more independent types of pastimes and focus. That is what has sparked her reaction and realization of there's more than just roommates here. Comment 2. How does one dump half of the household expenses on the other person if they share a bank account? Or are your finances kept separately? Just curious how this would work if applied to my life. OP, excellent question. We shared everything. The proposed 50-50ths was suggesting we place the necessary amount to pay bills in the same account, and any leftover money can be deposited to a new account. I think this is why she was very upset. She felt a huge loss of control knowing she won't be able to monitor my finances. Also, she felt a huge loss in her leftover money with this arrangement and saw that I would keep significantly more of my own. This is still being worked out because I think she is calling my bluff here, but my plan is to notify her next week as I modify my direct deposit and open a new account. It will definitely be more real there. To be clear, for all the trolls here, yes, she will have less leftover money after responsibilities and it's still enough to live on. Example, for reference. Assume I make $3,000 a month, she makes $1,000 a month. Responsibilities are $1,000 a month. So she'd contribute $500 and I would contribute $500. Where before she would contribute only $250. This is the last comment I'll add regarding money and finances. She's fine and she's not hurting. I promise when asked what if she leaves for another man. Interesting. She has no shortage of men hitting on her and we're by no means jealous people. So I've witnessed this multiple times and her reactions are somewhat indifferent. I will say, if another man for her was the answer, she'd tell me or she'd have some inkling maybe. There's no telling, but I think the problem is deeper than superficial attention from a different person. You might be right, and if this is the case, so be it. However, I'll live with peace knowing I left no stone left unturned. Crazy thought, I know I would be disappointed and saddened if she did leave for another man that would accept the bare minimum. But I'd also feel a peace knowing it's not all my fault. I know I'm responsible in some way to some degree. That's just marriage. I know sadness and depression will creep but we'll both overcome, but if this does happen at least there will be clear reasons and clarity as to why it did. Also, I know for a fact that she wouldn't cheat. We're both very blunt, open and transparent. She would definitely tell me that she wants to step out on our marriage before it actually happens. As would I. We owe ourselves this respect for each other and we actively practice it. New update. I debated for a long time on whether to submit an update on this matter. A few significant changes have taken place and I felt it would be good to not only share with you, but also to allow myself to process all of this in a uniform way. We're now almost 9 weeks in on the 180 method I mentioned I was starting and it started to render some positive reactions from my wife. I explained in the previous post that she started to notice things that she previously took for granted, started to ask more about my whereabouts and also started to notice I would go out with the kids more often without her and she started to invite herself, to which I didn't decline. So much has changed and it has changed for what seems to be for the better. This past Memorial Day weekend, my wife asked me if I wanted to go out for coffee because she wanted to talk to me about something. This was huge, because I can't recall the last time my wife asked to talk to me about something important. I must admit, I was very nervous and worried about what this could be about and my mind was racing with the plethora of scenarios of what it could possibly be. Of course I agreed and we took some time away from the kids to have this conversation at a local coffee shop. The talk was very constructive in nature. There was a ton of insightful information about herself that helped me further understand where she is in life both emotionally and mentally. We summarized what the core issues we are encountering are and she asked me for help. This is new and I cannot tell you how excited I was to hear something so sincere coming from my wife who for the last 2+ years has been absent. So after she was through sharing all her thoughts, I proposed a plan that I felt was right for us. This is something that I had been thinking about these last few weeks and I was planning on bringing this up in a few months if I noticed that things were not changing for the better. This date felt like the right place to share it since it goes hand in hand with what she talked about, and it also relates to the help she was asking me for. I started by first acknowledging her feelings and her concerns. I told her they are valid and how she feels is personal to her and that I care that she feels this way because I don't like the thought of her being sad or depressed. I also told her that my goal still is and will always be for us to reconcile and be the happily ever after we vowed to be for each other and that my love for her is as strong, if not stronger, as it was the day we said I do. I continued the conversation by telling her how I felt about the whole situation, read my previous posts for details, and how it affects me every day. I also clarified some things that she mentioned she was feeling because I have been very distant and monotone, transactional, lately. I explained to her that I was very much trying to protect my feelings and emotions from the rejection and neglect and that it wasn't personal. It was simply me safeguarding myself because I cannot control her, I can only control myself. This was a perfect segue way to the core of this approach, which is focused on self-accountability. I told her that for the longest time I was always working hard to make her happy and do things that I knew she enjoyed or wanted. However, I was always met with rejection and disappointment which caused a load of stress on me. I explained to her that I had to make a change for myself. After all, I can only control myself and make the changes that I want for myself. I mentioned how I was starting to implement new habits and routines that help edify me all while still executing all of our shared responsibilities including parenting, finances, and daily living activities. I explained that the goal is to continue to improve myself both as a husband and father, learn more, and be healthier, among other things. She was very receptive to this. She told me that she sees what I'm doing and that she is proud of the changes she has seen. She also told me how she's starting to realize that she feels left behind and that much of the things that have affected her negatively are her own fault. Toward the end of the conversation, which was about 3 hours, there was a very high spirit of reconciliation in the room. I told her that my goal is to ultimately make this work. However, I was very clear that I was not going to live under the current circumstances. I told her that my heart wants her to be happy even if it means elsewhere and that I also deserve to be happy myself. I also explained that I do not want our children to grow up thinking this was okay or normal because they deserve better as well. She told me she doesn't either. She told me she doesn't know what to do, to which I replied, let's set some clear goals. However, the goals will be for ourselves, not for each other. So here is what we established. We are in charge of our own happiness. The key here is that she's not responsible for making me happy, and vice versa. We both need to seek what that personal plan looks like individually. Also, we're both encouraged to include each other in taking those steps if we want, but it is not required. We are in control of our own individual lives and our own journey. This means we're both responsible for finding the resources necessary to grow, change and heal. We can definitely help one another when help is requested. However, unsolicited advice or help will not be rendered. We are responsible for communicating. This ensures nothing is left unsaid. If it was never brought up or discussed, it never happened. We're not mind readers, and we need to take ownership when we fail to communicate. Make a list of needs and wants. This gives us both clear directions about meeting each other's needs. This also gives us a choice as to what we choose to do, compromise on, or decline to do. This list also will not serve as a checklist for accountability. We made it clear we would not be bringing this list up for the purpose of arguing. And it was up to the other person to use the list as a tool for growth, transparency, or clarification. We concluded that it was up to us to decide if we will be happy doing these things for ourselves because we care, not to simply check a box. This was very important in order to establish long-term habits and not short-term band-aids, because you cannot make someone change or do something they don't believe is important. Established a deadline, Memorial Day 2025. At the end of the conversation, we concluded by setting Memorial Day 2025 as a hard stop to evaluate our lives and our progress. We agreed we would do this with the clear understanding that we will independently decide if we are happy here. If we determine we aren't happy, we will be getting a divorce. We would also both assume full responsibility for what happened should we get divorced. For example, if needs were not met, it would mean my partner chose not to meet them. This places full responsibility on each other in all areas. The whole process requires that if needs were not met, the next question should be, did we do everything to address this issue? If yes, then we will have a clear conscience of what transpired and know we left no stone unturned. If, however, we didn't do everything to address the issue, it will mean the issue was not important enough for you or didn't care to meet those needs. This goes both ways in all areas, like everything else. We established that the main motivator for change should be ourselves, and that if we did that, we would in turn begin to see beneficial changes towards each other. The goal is to ensure that everything we are doing for one another to meet each other's needs is being done because we want to do it for our spouse, not because she asked. Instead, it was done because I know it makes her happy and I love seeing them happy. I felt it was important to mention to her that we are no longer required to do anything for each other. It is now more of a I want to do these things for each other. Ultimately, I felt the conversation was very positive and productive. Many tears were shed and lots of hugging ensued. I know this doesn't mean or guarantee anything. However, this has never happened before, and I can honestly attribute it to the 180 method. I cannot give any more insight on this method other than it's the only thing I did differently and something new happened for what seems to be better. I've decided I will conclude and will refrain from this method moving forward as the plan now has changed. I'm planning to devote myself entirely to not only myself and my growth but to also work on her needs and wants because I want her to be happy by my side. She said and agreed she would do the same for herself. We agreed we would help and build each other wherever we request for it and that we will be approaching this as a team. As of today, some of the biggest changes I have noticed are her commitment to therapy and mental health. She is taking some antidepressants that are helping her. She is also more confident and in a far better mood more frequently. We have started to explore more ways of intimacy in multiple areas such as physical touch and words of affirmation. Sex is starting to make an appearance, which is exciting. Side note, sex was very awkward to start when you've been abstinent for so long. We've also started to work out together, which is great, and have lost weight, which is also very exciting. Overall, communication has improved, and I cannot wait to see where this leads. I hope this helps someone out there. I'm still very much interested in your feedback and thoughts on this. You all have been a huge help in giving me hope and insight into this tough journey. Trolls aside, many of you have really been instrumental in my journey both emotionally and mentally. I will not be providing any more updates until Memorial Day next year. I think it's now time to keep focusing on myself and start working on all the new opportunities that hopefully will arise with my wife. I wish you all the best in life and your relationships with those you love. TLDR, our marriage took a turn for the better after the 180 method, and we're now working on ourselves, each other, and rekindling our marriage. We also set a deadline for next year to either remain together or get divorced. Adoptive parents kicked me out at 17 for getting pregnant and refusing to keep my baby. 20 years later, their biological son reached out to me. When I was 17, my adoptive parents kicked me out and disowned me because I got pregnant and refused to give them my baby. 2 decades later, their biological son found me on Facebook and reached out. I was just 4 years old when I lost my parents in a tragic car accident. I don't remember much about the crash itself, just that one moment I was in the back seat, and the next time I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital. Waking up to a world of nurses and doctors was terrifying for me as a child. I remember a CPS worker sitting beside me, explaining that my parents had died and I would need to stay with another family for a while. It was also confusing and overwhelming. After that, I went through a series of foster homes, none of which ever felt like home. When I was 5, I was finally placed with Lorraine and James, who had been eager to have a child of their own. From the start, I felt their warmth and genuine care. They welcomed me into their home without hesitation, filling the emptiness I had felt from losing my own family. It seemed like, after all the tragedy, I had finally found a second family. However, as soon as I moved in, I noticed that James was very strict and disciplined, while Lorraine seemed to always follow his lead. I later learned that James's strictness was due to his background as an Army veteran who had been injured in action. His military experiences explained his obsession with meticulous planning and order. Understanding this didn't make it any easier when he would get angry over small things, like being a minute late for church. His strictness often left me feeling anxious and like I had to walk on eggshells around him. Lorraine, on the other hand, was more laid back but also drank a lot when James wasn't around. I watched her finish entire bottles of wine by herself, and she always seemed lost in her thoughts. She rarely asked about my school or homework, and aside from drinking, her main activities were cooking and cleaning because James was very particular about that. At first, things were smooth and I didn't witness many conflicts between them, but as I grew older, I began to see James's true nature. He was abusive. For James, my academic performance was everything. He constantly pressured me to improve, and if anyone outperformed me, he would get enraged. Even the slightest dip in my grades would result in him hitting me and calling me stupid. He frequently threatened to send me back to the orphanage if my marks didn't meet his expectations. As a child, I didn't realize this threat was empty, and it terrified me each time he mentioned it. I worked tirelessly to avoid being sent back. I also observed Lorraine and James having arguments, which would end with James dragging her into their bedroom. She would emerge with bruises on her hands and face. At first, I didn't understand what was happening, but it soon became clear that he was physically abusing her. To keep me from witnessing his violence, he would isolate Lorraine. I couldn't understand why Lorraine never called the police. After their fights, she would just sit and cry for hours, while James would drink beer and watch TV. Realizing James's abusive nature made me fear being alone with him or doing anything that might upset him. But as anyone who has lived in an abusive environment knows, abusers will find any excuse to lash out. No matter how careful I was or how hard I tried to avoid provoking him, he always found a reason to be angry. Initially, it was all about my grades, but as I grew older, his focus shifted. It wasn't just about academics anymore. He criticized everything. From the clothes I wore to the friends I chose and even any romantic interests I had. He insisted I come straight home from school, claiming that spending time with friends was a distraction and that they would amount to nothing. According to him, I needed to keep my focus solely on my studies. Unbeknownst to James, Lorraine discreetly allowed me to spend an hour with my friends after school. Knowing that James wouldn't return until later in the evening, she saw it as a small chance for me to enjoy some normalcy and social interaction beyond the tense atmosphere at home. These brief moments away from the constant pressure and scrutiny were precious to me, and I valued the time spent with my friends, even if it was short-lived. Lorraine's quiet act of kindness meant a great deal to me. However, things took a turn for the worse when James lost his job. The job loss seemed to heighten his frustration and anger, worsening the already abusive environment at home. With the added strain of financial instability, James became even more unpredictable and volatile, lashing out over the smallest things. I recall one night when Lorraine had just finished making dinner. As James sat down and glanced at the meal, he erupted into a furious rant about how it didn't meet his standards. He began yelling and slamming the table, berating her and threatening to throw her out if she couldn't cook properly. In his rage, he threw his plate against the wall, leaving Lorraine and me in a state of fear as we watched him. I could feel my whole body trembling. When I finally ate the food, I found nothing wrong with Lorraine's cooking. Over time, James's drinking worsened. With his unemployment and idle days, beer cans accumulated in the living room each morning, which Lorraine had to clean up. I also found myself unable to spend time with my friends as James would harshly criticize me if I was even a minute late coming home from school. At 15, a classmate named Harry confessed his feelings for me and asked me out on a date. Despite my anxiety over James finding out, I was eager to experience a date and explore my feelings as a teenager. So, despite my worries, I agreed to go out with Harry. We met at a local coffee shop after school and spent the afternoon chatting and getting to know each other. That date turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life, as it marked the beginning of our love story. Harry was everything James was not, gentle and kind to everyone, including animals. He would bring me my favorite flowers whenever he could, saving up his pocket money to do so. Having never had a good role model, I didn't expect much, But Harry treated me with the care and respect I had always wanted. James was always a bit suspicious and would question me about whether I was spending time with any boys. I would deny it, silently hoping he wouldn't uncover the truth. Fortunately, not having a phone meant there were no incriminating texts he could discover. Harry and I took great care to keep our relationship private, even avoiding telling our friends to prevent any gossip. Harry understood my fear of James and was willing to keep our relationship a secret. When prom approached, Harry and I decided to attend with our group of friends to avoid drawing any unwanted attention. However, when James learned of my plans to go to prom, he outright forbade it. He dismissed it as a waste of time and refused to buy me a dress. I didn't really care about the dress. I just wanted to enjoy the evening with my friends. I begged him to let me go, reminding him of my good grades and how I had met his expectations. He scolded me, belittling my friendships and insisting that prom was insignificant. Lorraine disagreed and argued with James, believing there was no reason for me to stay home while my peers enjoyed themselves. James insisted that teenagers lacked a sense of right and wrong and that he wouldn't allow me to go out simply to have fun when I could stay home and be safe. Despite my pleas and attempts to explain how important this event was to me, he remained resolute, dismissing my feelings as trivial. He even threatened to lock me out if I tried to sneak out for prom. On the night of the dance, I was the only one who stayed behind, spending the evening crying alone in my room. I was growing increasingly weary of living with James. After high school, it became even harder to see Harry since I wasn't allowed out and didn't have a phone. I asked James for a phone, but he insisted I didn't need one at my age. I argued that I'd be going to college and that everyone had a phone, but he said I'd have to buy one myself if I wanted it. That's when I decided to get a part-time job. Though the pay was modest, it allowed me to earn some money and gain a bit of independence. It also meant I could spend time with Harry without James finding out, using work as an excuse while I met up with him. Eventually, I received the incredible news that I had been accepted into an Ivy League university with a full scholarship. This was a significant accomplishment, as no one from my town had ever achieved it before. James took it upon himself to brag about my success to anyone who would listen, proclaiming how proud he was of me. Despite his constant boasting, he never actually congratulated me personally, instead acting as though my achievement was a reflection of his own success. After receiving my college acceptance, I felt an enormous sense of relief. At last, James had nothing to complain about, as I had fulfilled his greatest dream by securing a spot in a prestigious college with a scholarship. With my job and academic success, he couldn't label me as lazy anymore. His newfound satisfaction led him to agree to buy me a phone and allowed me to use the money I earned from work for college expenses. He even permitted me to hang out with my friends after work. For the first time, I felt like I could enjoy life a bit, just like everyone else. Harry and I knew we'd be separated when we went to college, but we promised to meet up whenever we could. Our intimacy was careful and limited, with both of us taking precautions. A couple of weeks later, I began experiencing unusual symptoms that resembled those of my period, but without actually having it. Being perceptive, I sensed something was wrong with my body, and I found myself craving food at odd hours. Panicking, I told Harry that I needed to take a pregnancy test, and he agreed. I took 3 tests, all of which came back positive. The shock was overwhelming, and I collapsed on the floor, crying uncontrollably. It felt like I was living through one of my worst nightmares. Harry tried to comfort me, but I was trembling with fear. I knew that if James discovered I was pregnant, especially right before college, he would react with unimaginable anger. Harry reassured me that the decision was entirely mine and that he would support me no matter what. He suggested talking to his parents first and then approaching James together to prevent any violent reactions. Given my difficult home situation, Harry was genuinely concerned for my safety. His parents were incredibly understanding. His mother embraced me and comforted me, saying that such things happen to many people and not to worry too much. They agreed to come to my place to help break the news to James. When Lorraine and James were informed of the pregnancy, they were utterly shocked. Lorraine asked me twice if I was certain, and I confirmed with the results from multiple tests. James, however, erupted in anger, accusing me of being a product of his reluctance to adopt children from strangers, citing their unpredictable nature. He hurled a barrage of insults at me, claiming I had ruined my life. Harry's parents tried to calm James down, but he directed his fury at them, blaming them for the situation and appearing ready to physically confront Harry, who sat quietly in the corner. Overcome with emotion, I started crying and told James that I wasn't planning to keep the baby, so he had nothing to worry about. I assured him that everything could return to normal, and I would still go to college as planned. At that point, Lorraine asked to speak with James privately. They left the room while I sat there, crying and anxiously fidgeting. Harry's parents looked at me with sympathy. When Lorraine and James returned, Lorraine's words struck me like a tidal wave. She proposed that we didn't necessarily have to give up the baby, suggesting that I could carry the pregnancy to term and then transfer my parental rights to them. I sat there in stunned silence as Lorraine stressed that the child was a gift from God and urged us not to consider other options. James supported Lorraine's view, suggesting that this arrangement would be ideal, especially since Lorraine was already pregnant herself. His words left me completely bewildered, and I struggled to grasp what he was proposing. James revealed that Lorraine had only recently discovered her pregnancy and had kept it private while processing the news. With my own pregnancy, they now saw an opportunity to raise both children together as siblings. The shock of their suggestion left me speechless, grappling with the gravity of their proposal and the unexpected turn of events. Harry's parents were equally stunned and quickly expressed their disapproval. However, James interrupted, asserting that the decision was not theirs to make, and looked at me expectantly, waiting for my response. Overwhelmed with anxiety, I knew deep down that I couldn't agree to Lorraine and James's proposal. The idea of giving up my child to be raised in an environment reminiscent of my own troubled upbringing was unbearable. Although Lorraine had shown herself to be a caring mother in many ways, I couldn't ignore the fact that she couldn't shield herself from James's behavior, let alone ensure my child's safety. The thought of subjecting my unborn child to the same uncertainty and potential danger was unacceptable. While I cherished the thought of becoming a mother one day, I knew the timing and circumstances were far from ideal. I couldn't bring a child into the world under these conditions, knowing I couldn't guarantee their safety and well-being. I firmly told James that, although I was glad to be gaining a sibling soon, I couldn't proceed with the pregnancy. I was neither mentally nor physically strong enough to handle it. The idea of watching my child grow up with Lorraine and James, while pretending they were just a sibling, was inconceivable. Living a lie and denying my child the truth about their parentage was something I simply couldn't endure. When I shared my decision, Lorraine broke down in tears, expressing her disappointment that I couldn't do this for her despite all the sacrifices she had made for me. James, visibly enraged, got up and began pacing the room. I tried to explain my stance, but they refused to understand. Harry's mother stepped in, supporting my choice and offering to arrange an appointment with a gynecologist to move forward with the procedure. Lorraine's crying intensified, and James started shouting, asking if I was satisfied now that I was causing her so much pain. He then demanded that I pack my things and leave the house. My shock was palpable as James declared he was fed up with me, accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish for not giving them my child. Harry's parents gently urged me to pack up quickly, clearly troubled by James's volatile behavior. I hurried upstairs to gather my important documents, photo albums, and as many clothes as I could. When I came back downstairs, James warned me to take whatever I could carry because he planned to throw out and burn the rest of my belongings the next day. I tried to speak with Lorraine, but she wouldn't even look at me. As I left, James told me I should never come back. I was bewildered and heartbroken, unable to understand what I had done to warrant such ruthless rejection. Harry and his parents generously offered me a place to stay, and I returned to their home. The following days were a blur as they took me to the gynecologist, where we scheduled the necessary procedure. It was a difficult decision for both me and Harry, but given the circumstances, we knew it was the best choice for our future. After the procedure, I spent a few days recovering with Harry by my side, offering unwavering support. He and his parents were incredibly kind and did everything they could to help me through this challenging time. Throughout this ordeal, James and Lorraine never reached out to me. When the day came for me to move into college, I texted James, hoping he might have forgiven me by then. Instead, he responded with harsh words, calling me a failure and a disappointment and accusing me of turning into a prostitute. He said he didn't want his biological child to end up like me. His cruel message cut me deeply, and I cried for hours. They had been the only parents I knew, and now, with their own children on the way, they had severed ties with me. My college years were challenging but ultimately rewarding. I juggled a part-time job with my studies, working hard to maintain my grades. It was tough, but I was determined to succeed. Fortunately, Harry kept his promise and supported me throughout. He would visit me at college whenever he could, and his constant encouragement helped me through the rough patches. During holidays, his parents often invited me to spend time with them, and they began to feel like family to me. I graduated with honors, achieving the distinction of KL, and Harry and his parents were there to celebrate my graduation. I secured a good job in my field, and it was a proud moment knowing all my hard work had paid off. Harry and I eventually moved in together, and our relationship grew stronger with time. We supported each other through life's ups and downs, and after several years, we decided to get married. Our wedding was a beautiful celebration of our love and commitment, surrounded by our closest friends and family. I didn't even consider inviting James and Lorraine to the wedding. As a married couple, Harry and I have continued to build our life together. Recently, we took a significant step by buying a new house and renting out our old one. Our new home has become a cozy haven where we create new memories and plan for the future. We bought the new place to be closer to Harry's aging parents, who have become like family to me as well. I want to be there for them in any way I can. It's been almost 20 years since James and Lorraine kicked me out, and I barely remember them now. Over the years, I haven't dwelled on them much, though I do recall spending my first year of college grieving their absence. By my second year, I resolved to forge a new life for myself, free from their rejection. It was painful. And building this life on my own took immense strength. They've never reached out to me and I haven't felt the need to check in on them either. Throughout these years, Harry has been my steadfast companion and partner in every sense. Although we never had children, our two beloved dogs have brought us immense joy. We visit Harry's parents every other weekend and frequently enjoy trips and discovering new restaurants together. Looking back, I feel that my life has turned out well, and I wish I could embrace my 17-year-old self and reassure her about her future. Recently, I received a friend request on Facebook from someone named Matt with a surname that seemed familiar. When I checked his profile, I was taken aback by how much he resembled James. I accepted his request and he sent me a greeting. I replied, and he soon asked if I knew anyone named James and Lorraine. My heart raced as I realized he was their son. Nervous yet determined to be honest, I confirmed that I knew them since they had adopted me when I was 5. Matt expressed a strong desire to talk if I was comfortable, so I agreed and gave him my number. When he called, the conversation started off awkwardly, but Matt soon shared that he had always known about a child his parents had before him because he had seen my pictures in the family photo album. Whenever he asked about it, his parents would dodge the question. He had been searching for me for a long time, having learned my name from our hometown, and he had recently stumbled upon my profile by chance. His sole reason for reaching out was to uncover the truth. As I recounted the painful events of my past, including how his parents had asked me to give up my child and then expelled me when I refused, I could feel the weight of the emotions. I described their absence from my life over the years and how I had managed to cope thanks to the support of my husband's parents. The conversation was emotionally charged, and I revealed long-buried feelings. Matt's voice conveyed shock and disbelief as he absorbed my account. After a period of silence, he told me he had no idea his parents had treated me so cruelly. He had always believed their story that I had left on my own accord. He thanked me sincerely for my honesty and apologized on behalf of his parents, expressing regret for the pain they had caused me. Since our conversation, I've felt grateful for Matt's effort to reach out and his understanding, which has brought me some comfort and validation. However, I worry about how James and Lorraine will react when they learn that I've shared the truth with Matt. Did I make the right choice in revealing everything, or would it have been better to keep silent? Update 1. I wanted to share that my initial concerns were valid. Within just 24 hours of Matt reaching out to me, Lorraine and James began bombarding me with calls and texts. Since I've kept the same number all these years, it was relatively easy for them to find me. Their messages have been filled with anger and accusations, mostly centered around why I disclosed family secrets to Matt. James's message, in particular, was harsh, insisting I should have kept quiet as I had for years and not interfered between him and his son. Overwhelmed and unsure of how to handle the situation, I've been dodging their calls and messages, uncertain of the best way to address this unexpected confrontation. Update 2. I informed Harry about the situation. He was unaware of Matt's outreach and, upon learning that I had shared our past, he felt I shouldn't have done so. His concern wasn't about the truth being wrong but rather that James was clearly unstable and that this revelation would only stir up unnecessary drama in our lives. I also spoke with Matt, who told me he confronted James and Lorraine after our discussion. They attempted to deny everything, labeling me as a liar and accusing me of using them until I could escape to college. Despite their claims, Matt didn't believe them and told them to stay away from his family. He also informed them he would be cutting them off financially. Matt revealed that he and his wife had recently adopted twins, but James and Lorraine had refused to visit them, which had made Matt question their behavior. After learning about my past, Matt understood why they might have been unhappy with his adoption. He assured me he would ask them to leave us alone and extended an invitation for me to visit his twins whenever I could. He expressed a desire to get to know me better, given our sibling connection. I'm touched by his kindness and might take him up on his offer to visit his family with Harry. Update 3. It's been 7 months since my last update, and for those asking, here's what's new. I decided to block James and Lorraine from all communication channels, which has stopped their threatening messages. Matt intervened and spoke to them, so they had no choice but to back off. Harry and I have visited Matt and his wife at least 4 times over the past few months. Each visit has been warm and welcoming, and we've spent hours reconnecting, sharing stories, and bonding over our childhoods. I've also had the joy of spending time with Matt's twins, who are delightful. I'm deeply grateful that Matt reached out, and the connection with him and his family has been a source of healing and joy for me. Am I the asshole for not allowing my mother to bring her boyfriend I don't know or want to know to my wedding? I, 33, am not close with my mother, 55F, at all. She divorced my dad, 60, when I was 7 and almost immediately married my stepfather, Mark, whom despite everything, I was close with. They remained married until I was 16. I was upset when she divorced him and went to live with my dad and stepmom. In my adult life, I've chosen to remain close to my stepdad and even attended his wedding to his current wife, who is a very nice woman. My dad and my stepmom are great people. Since her divorce to my stepdad, my mom has been in and out of relationships, each time claiming this guy is the love of her life until they do something she doesn't like and they aren't the love of her life anymore. Both divorces with my dad and my stepdad were for very petty reasons. Dad, I think because he wouldn't allow her to get a new car because the budget was tight. I think the one that lasted the longest was 6 years and I think it's the current guy she's with, according to my sister. After I left home, she never did anything with me without her boyfriends. When I was 25, she broke up with her boyfriend and tried to cry to me about it. After working with my therapist, I set the boundary with my mother that if she wasn't willing to do anything with me without her boyfriend to not bother, and I didn't want to talk about her love life. She was very hurt and we fell out for a while, but she came back around a year later and has respected my rules since, but we only get together about 3 or 4 times per year. I understand that my mom's relationships and love life are important to her, so I respect that we don't get together often. Fast forward to this year, I'm getting married to my partner, 35M, of a decade in October. It's a small intimate backyard wedding and reception, BBQ. We live in a rural area and our backyard wedding will have roughly 40 people. My dad, stepmom, stepdad and his new wife have all been invited. My mom asked if she could bring her boyfriend. I said no because I don't know him. My mom asked if she could bring him to meet me so I could meet him before the wedding. I said no and that I still had no interest in meeting her boyfriends. She said she understood, but she felt it was unfair that I wasn't allowing her a +1 to my wedding when my dad and my stepdad were allowed to bring their spouses. I told her that the difference was that I knew their spouses. She wanted to know why I was so adamant about refusing to get to know her boyfriend. I explained to her that I saw no need since she'd just break up with them and move on to someone else eventually, as she has always done before. She started to cry and told me I was being unreasonable and treating her as if she's a witch ****. Both my fiancé and my sister feel like I should suck it up for one day and let her bring her boyfriend so she can be comfortable there. I'm seriously considering it, but I wanted to know if I'm TA here for sticking to my boundary at my wedding and what your thoughts are. Update. After reading everything here, I've decided to email my mother and invite him. I was already leaning towards telling her that he can come when I post it. I decided to set some ground rules for my mother. He is there as a +1 to my mother only. I made it clear to her that he is not my family and he is not my stepfather, so I will appreciate her not telling other people at the wedding he is my stepfather. Mark is my stepfather and he will be there. He is not to be in any family photos. In fairness, my stepdad Mark won't be in any family photos either, only my mom, dad, stepmom, and my siblings. He is not to approach me at any point during the wedding and reception. This does not change my previous boundaries. I'm only allowing him to come for her own comfort and to create a sense of fairness. I respect the fact she is in a relationship, but that her love life has nothing to do with me and I wish to keep it that way. I told my mother that these are my terms for him being at my wedding and my terms are final, and that I hope she can respect the fact that I'm trying to be reasonable. I use this opportunity to remind her of the reasons I put the boundary up in the first place. These reasons included forcing me to do activities with her shorter-term boyfriends in the past, forcing me to only discuss her love life while showing no interest in my life, and putting her relationships above her own children. If she responds, I'll let everyone know. Update 2. My mom called me within 10 minutes of getting the email. She thanked me for allowing him to come and said they would abide by my terms. She said she felt really hurt that her actions during her midlife crisis are why I'm refusing to meet her current boyfriend, who she says she's been with for 7.5 years, and that she thought things would eventually calm down enough where I would be comfortable meeting him. She said she now realizes that it will never happen. I told her that I'm firm on my stance. I think she started to cry, but she said she understood and only wants him there because being around my dad and stepdad and their new wives, my dad has been married for 23 years and my stepdad for 12, makes her anxious and he helps keep her calm. She said she respects my stance and said it's her own fault I feel this way. I felt this may be the start of a guilt trip, so I politely ended the call. Verdict, not the asshole. Additional comments to the post from OOP. OP. Update. I will update here since Mods told me I was maxed on my post. I want to thank everyone here for commenting and giving their opinions. Without context, I think it's a little hard to understand why I'm the way I am towards my mother. This past has given me a chance to reflect on my own behavior towards my mother. The truth of it is, I find dealing with her to be exhausting, and I want to explain to everyone why. My mom is a gold digger. And that isn't my dad or stepdad talking shit about my mom. They're classy guys and would never do that. This is my own conclusion. My mom said regarding both divorces, I'd still be married if dad or stepdad just gave me what I wanted. She's also tried to start fights with my stepmom because she realizes my brother and I prefer her over our actual mom. It's true, I'm closer with my stepmom. I go to her for all the mom things because she listens and cares. My stepmom doesn't make everything about her. I believe my mom suffers from main character syndrome and expects to be the center of attention at every event, and if she isn't, she gets drunk, which leads me to my next point. My mom is an alcoholic. She was in a DUI 8 years ago and crashed into another car. Thank goodness no one was hurt. She doesn't drive anymore, lives in the city an hour away, and uses public transportation, but she still drinks a lot. At her height, she drank roughly 3 bottles of wine per day. I don't really know or care if it's more or less now. One of the other boundaries I set is I won't be around her if she's been drinking because that just stresses me out more. I'll be honest, I'm anticipating she's going to cause a drunken scene at my wedding. She slept with my brother's best friend 8 years ago when they were 21. This was a boy who my brother had known since preschool, and this ruined the friendship. 8 years on, and my brother will never forgive her for it. My mom thinks my brother needs to get over himself and that she did nothing wrong. Technically speaking, she didn't do anything illegal and everyone was a consenting adult, but it still felt so wrong that she slept with someone my brother was so close with. It's why I don't really want my partner around her. She dates younger guys. This current boyfriend is 10 years younger than her, which is a little better. I don't judge her for dating younger guys, that's okay. It's not okay to sleep with someone you watched grow up. This whole post helped me see just how exhausted I am by her. I realized I don't want to deal with her BS anymore. I also agree that I have maybe at times shown it by being TA and being unfair and unreasonable towards her. I just don't like myself when dealing with her. It puts me in a bad mood. However, the idea of having her more in my life makes me nauseous, but I want to keep the peace with the larger family, grandparents, aunt, uncle, etc. I've decided to take a page from my youngest brother's book and keep contact with just family functions. He's cordial to her at family events and keeps the peace when he's around her. But he keeps his distance and won't see her outside of a family event. So I'm going to do the same. I realize she could get sober, go to therapy, and change her entire life around, but I'm still going to see the woman who drinks all the time, sleeps with my brother's friend, and just treats people like garbage. It's not fair to anyone. Not me for having dealt with her, and not her if she ever did or was actively working hard to change her life. I do want to make sure she's taken care of, fine and healthy, but I also want to not be emotionally involved anymore. Figuring that out is above Reddit's pay grade. Relevant comments from OOP, resident_test_2107. Honestly, I think you need to distinguish the hurt you felt as a kid when she broke up with your 2 father figures from what would happen now if they broke up. You're an adult, not a kid. Her breakups are her business, and don't impact you directly. Expecting someone to come to a wedding with her 2 exes there with their new wives is a lot. Expecting her to suck it up to put you first feels like you're trying to play out some drama and feelings you have left over from feeling hurt and abandoned as a kid by her breaking up your home. Divorce happens, it sucks for the kids, but so does an unhappy marriage. Feels like time to go back to therapy. OP, in my early 20s, she used to call me whenever she had a breakup and expected my sister and me to be emotionally supportive. She wouldn't spend time with me without her BFS around. She was insisting I meet some guy, who typically is a lot younger than her, like late 20s, or early 30s, which is good on her but still weird for me. She was dating for a few weeks. They'd break up after a year and she'd immediately find someone new. Wash, rinse, repeat. This was the pattern from when I was 19, 25. I always had to spend time with both of them. All she would talk about is her relationship. She would never ask me about school, my job, or my relationship. She's only met my partner twice. There's a lot more I can add about how my mom constantly prioritized her relationships over being a parent, but they aren't pertinent to this story. She got with a really toxic guy when I was 24 who stole a bunch of money from her. We all warned her he was a scumbag, but she didn't listen. After that, I told her I wanted nothing to do with her boyfriends going forward. She got really mad, saying I was disrespectful and that any child should want to see her mother happy. But I just got tired of dealing with her relationship drama, and I don't ever want to deal with it again. I'm sure the guy she's with is nice since he's been around this long, but I'm just done. I don't want to be around my mother, but I want to be around family. August 28, 2023. I've decided to estrange myself from my mother. We haven't gotten along since I was 16, and the last several years have been really bad. We only get together about 2-4 times per year, and it always ends with us fighting. I'm tired of it. I'll be honest. I've considered cutting contact with her, but the one thing that's preventing me from fully severing ties is her parents, my grandparents. I love them very much, and they are still hurting from my brother choosing to sever ties with her and keeping in low contact with that side of the family. My brother had valid reasons for doing this to her, and he will get together with my grandparents if my mother isn't there, but it's hard because they want to see him at the holidays and during special moments. I'm getting married in Oct, and this will be the first event where my mom and brother are in the same area. I've told both of them to stay away from each other, but I'm anticipating there will be drama because my mom doesn't like to hear she can't do something. I want to make it so we can see each other and be cordial at family events but not hang out otherwise. My youngest brother does something similar. I don't want to write her a letter because I fear that will cause more drama, but I expect she'll eventually call and want to do something with me, but I want to say no unless it's at a larger family function. How should I do this? My mother thinks she's entitled to alcohol at my wedding, September 23, 2023. My fiancé, 35M, and I, 33NB, are getting married in 2 weeks in our backyard. We will be having a catering spread for our reception afterwards. We decided to have a dry wedding for 2 reasons. My mom is an alcoholic who is known for making a scene when she gets drunk, and my fiancé has a brother who binge drinks and has had alcohol poisoning on more than one occasion. He doesn't drink all the time, but if he starts, he can't stop until he either passes out or someone physically restrains him from getting more. I also have an uncle, mom's brother, and a stepdad who are in recovery and don't need the temptation. Neither fiancé and I are big drinkers, so we decided to just avoid any problems and just have a dry wedding. We will have a less dry reception party, honeymoon with some of our friends later on. All of our families have been supportive. My uncle was especially grateful to us for doing this since he takes his recovery very seriously and has been 7 years sober. I sent out wedding invitations 4 months ago and said it would be a dry wedding and asked people not to bring alcohol. Now today I get this call from my mom, who I also sent an invitation to 4 months ago. Mom, is it true you're not having alcohol at your wedding? Me, yes. Fiancé and I decided we didn't want alcohol during our special time. Mom, that's so silly. It's going to make your wedding boring. Me, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but and I have made our decision. We want everyone to feel comfortable at our wedding. Mom, clearly you don't care about my comfort. What if I want to have a little drink to pass the time? Me, like you did at a different uncle's wedding where you got so drunk and made a horrible scene calling uncle's wife a gold digger. Mom, it wasn't my fault. They made the drinks there too strong. Me, right. I really wish you would address this need to have alcohol wherever you go. Mom, I don't need to have alcohol. I just think your wedding will be boring without it. You want to have a fun wedding, don't you? Me, it will be a fun wedding. We don't need alcohol to have fun. Mom, this is so stupid. Why should everyone else be punished just to make it comfortable for a few people? It seems like you care more about uncle and stepdad than anyone else. Me. Or maybe I just want to avoid any scenes. Mom, I just told you that wasn't my fault. Me, just like your DUI isn't your fault? Mom, how dare you bring up that difficult time in my life? I was going through a lot emotionally. What the hell is wrong with you kids? You need to mind your own business. If I want to drink, that's my business. Me, well, my wedding is my business. We do not want alcohol there. That's final. I can't stop you if you decide to pregame my wedding, but I've already made it clear to uncles and brothers that if you cause a scene that you are to be made to leave. Mom starts crying. Why do you kids hate me so much? What did I ever do to deserve to be treated like this by my children? Me, are you really ready for me to go down that list? Mom, none of you understand. None of you will ever understand. I'm the mother of the bride. I should be treated better than this. Me, I think I've treated you pretty well during this process. I've acquiesced to your boyfriend whom I don't even know coming to my wedding. I've even given in to some of your other demands. So please tell me how you've been mistreated. Mom, You didn't invite me to go dress shopping. The mother of the bride always goes dress shopping with her daughter. I barely know because you never bring him around me. How do I know that you're marrying the right person? Me, that's because Aunt made my dress. Mom, sarcastically. Well, isn't that just special? Me, sighing. As for the rest, I think you know why. We aren't really close enough for you to have any say in who my significant other is. Honestly, Mom, I'm done with this conversation. If you really feel that strongly about this, I'll understand if you don't want to attend my wedding. Mom. Oh, I bet you'd like that, wouldn't you? One way or another you will respect me as your mother. Me? Sure, Mom. I'm hanging up now. Bye. Guys, I'm so livid right now. I have half a mind to uninvite her. I spoke to my dad and her brother. My uncle thinks her drinking is getting really bad again and has been wanting to hold an intervention. I told him I'm focused on the wedding right now, but that I definitely agree this was out of line and something needs to be done. What should I do? I don't want her ruining my wedding, but I'm so tired of dealing with this. Sorry, this is probably above Reddit's pay grade, but I just needed to vent. Update, I sent a text reiterating the rules. She said she knows where she isn't welcome and said she won't attend. My dad told me not to worry about this anymore and that he'll see to it that she doesn't ruin my wedding. Update 2. I sent this text to my mom. Mother, at this point I'm going to officially uninvite you from my wedding. I'm not going to allow you to change your mind, and I'd prefer it if you do not come to my wedding at all given your poor behavior. At this point, I've decided I don't want any further contact with you unless you decide to curb your toxic behaviors and drinking. I wish you the best. I hope you can find a way to heal, but I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry if this hurts you, but I can't handle you in my life anymore. If you try to force the issue, I'll be forced to take legal action up to and including contacting law enforcement. Please don't contact me again. I went to delete her from my Facebook page only to find a post that she had just written saying how being a mother is a thankless job and how she doesn't understand how she raised rude and judgmental kids. She ended it by saying she hopes her kids get over themselves someday. I'm done. This sucks, but it's been a long time coming. My head hurts. Small update. September 24th, 2023. Firstly, I want to thank everyone for their support. You have no idea how much your love and constructive comments mean to me. I'm glad I'm not alone. It's not a huge update, but I guess my grandparents and uncles have had enough. They've decided to stage an intervention next weekend. If she refuses to get help, she will no longer be welcomed at family events and she will no longer be part of the family. They told me not to worry about it. My sister will go as she's the only one of her children that even has a real relationship with her, but even my sister said that if she doesn't get help, she will cut her off too. I'm hoping and praying this works, but given that she spent 1 year in rehab and the second she was off probation chose to drink again doesn't give me a lot of hope. My dad told me he's hiring the local biker gang to act as security. We live in a small town and the nearest big city is about an hour away, so it would be really expensive to have a security company come out. I don't have a problem with that. This is the type of gang that helps out abused kids and animals, and they do a lot of good where I live. The worst I've heard about them is they doled out some rural justice to a guy that was beating up the sister of one of the members and ran him out of town. When my mom got her DUI, she ran into someone's house and car. When she tried to back out, no one was hurt, thank goodness. And I guess it was the house of a relation of someone in the gang, so they agreed to help, and my dad is paying them to be security just in case. They know my family. One of my dad's cousins is a member, and they know my mom. I think she dated a guy in the gang at one point, and what to look out for. It may be moot if she ends up in rehab. I'm not stressing about her anymore. I have 13 days until my wedding. I'm going to focus on the final touches and just enjoy myself. My biological mom made her choices. Now that I've stood up for myself, I feel nothing but relief. My stepmom will be there and I see her more as my real mom, so it's all fine. I've been through a lot of therapy already, so I've had to make peace with how my actual mother is. I'm officially estranged from my mother, September 24th, 2023, same day. Well, it happened yesterday. I got into a fight with my mother and officially estranged myself from her. It sucks, and I had a gnarly headache when I was done. Her drinking and behavior just proved too much and I had to univite her from my wedding. I feel sad it came to this, but the most powerful feeling I have is relief. Update. My mother thinks she's entitled to alcohol at my wedding, September 30th, 2023. I didn't think I'd be back so soon, but it's my mom's world and we all just live in it. My mother got 911 called on her for domestic violence on Tuesday. She apparently started throwing wine bottles at her boyfriend, who locked himself in the bathroom and called the cops while she destroyed their place in one of her temper tantrums. She wasn't making any sense when the cops got there, so they restrained her and took her to a hospital. She's been stuck in the psychiatric ward ever since. My sister was listed as a contact for her and she got the call about Mom on Wednesday. The doctors at the hospital spoke to my sister and they think she may be showing signs of alcohol-related dementia and some sort of psychotic disorder like bipolar disorder. They currently have her in alcohol detox and from what my sister was told, it's pretty bad. They won't allow her visitors until she's out of detox, not that anyone really has a desire to visit her anymore. My sister and I decided enough was enough and we petitioned for guardianship for her yesterday at the request of a social worker who interviewed my sister, my uncles, my grandparents, and myself. A guardianship means they can hold her while it winds through the system rather than her being released after 72 hours. My grandmother's upset as she thinks all of the issues should be kept in the family and the state shouldn't step in. My uncles and grandfather are on the side of having a guardianship. As far as they're concerned, she's not welcome in the family anymore and they won't allow her to continue to take advantage of anyone in the family anymore. My sister and I say let her be a professional's problem and let them figure out what to do with her. My brothers don't care and have effectively washed their hands of her years ago, so their stance is whatever keeps her as far away as humanly possible. We can't deal with her anymore, and why should we? With the guardianship petition, I'm working on washing my hands of this situation entirely. I'm sure I'll be interviewed about why a guardianship is necessary, but other than that, I don't plan to have any further contact with my mom unless she apologizes and makes amends for her behavior, if that's something she's even capable of anymore. I just don't see that happening and any compassion or understanding I had for her in the past is gone. Whatever state her life is in, she brought it on herself. I just want to move on with my life without her in it and be done with her for good. It doesn't look like she'll be released from the hospital anytime soon, so there's no risk of her attending my wedding. I did talk to her boyfriend yesterday after sister and I filed our paperwork and we decided to invite him to lunch. He's decided to break up with her for good and we learned just how bad things were with her. He's a real nice guy who's been caught up in a bad situation and had no clue how bad she could be. I feel really bad for him. I did decide to invite him to my wedding as I can tell he's a lonely dude who's been to hell and back. Not sure he'll show, but the offer is there. There was a time I'd have allowed an event like this to ruin the run-up to the wedding, but I've been able to separate my mom's behavior from the wedding. It hasn't put a damper on it. Now that my mom is squared away, I can enjoy myself. I just put the final touches on the catering order and am expecting the last of my supplies. My aunt wants to put the final touches on my wedding attire. If I haven't mentioned, both my fiancé and I are huge steampunk fans, and so we're wearing steampunk attire and encouraging everyone else to dress in steampunk. Not required though. My wedding dress is actually more of a suit situation, but it looks badass. I don't think I'll update again as I want to put all of this behind me and I don't plan to have any contact with my mother going forward. I'm looking forward to a bright future with my husband. My mom can stay in the past, and as cold and heartless as it sounds, I'm glad she's not going to be my family's problem anymore. Post-wedding update, October 9th, 2023. I just signed into this account again with a lot of people begging for updates. I don't have a lot. I guess my entire story is now in the best of Reddit. Thanks, I guess. I never knew dealing with my alcoholic mother was worthy of a best post. I just wanted to rant and sanity check myself. Only news on my mother is that she's out of detox and currently in a catatonic state, refusing to speak, eat or drink water. They may install a feeding tube if she doesn't let up. I think she's trying to be dramatic and get attention, so do my uncles. I could be wrong, but honestly I don't care anymore. We're not sure she has dementia, but she definitely has something going on, but doing any kind of evaluation while she acts like this is difficult. She also has liver disease, needs dialysis and possibly even a transplant, if she qualifies. The doctors made it very clear that if she doesn't quit drinking, she will die within the next 5 years and it may even still be too late. I think I'd feel more sad, but I've had to realize that I lost my mother long ago. I did invite my mom's boyfriend, but he chose not to come. He's decided to get help for his own alcohol issues, according to my sister. I wish him the best. As for the wedding, I'm now happily married and on Wednesday I took a pregnancy test that came back positive. We're super excited but haven't told anyone in our family yet. The wedding was fantastic and the day went off without a hitch. We had a blast and are heading out on our honeymoon on Wednesday to Costa Rica. My brothers and stepbrothers very sweetly hazed my husband during the at-home bachelor party and made it clear they're excited to have another brother. My stepmom did all of the mom stuff during the wedding. That was already planned before all of this. No one snuck in alcohol, there weren't any scenes. The worst that happened was my sister crying due to all of the stress she's been under. I do have some sympathy, but most of it is self-inflicted though, because she enables. But all in all, it was a great day and I was surrounded by those I love most. I know a lot of people asked for pics on my wedding suit. I will see if there's some way I can crop identifying stuff from it and post it here once I get my wedding pictures back. Otherwise, I'll figure out a way to post the outfits themselves. That's all I have. I'll try to update after my honeymoon. Now it seems like a baby is coming, so no promises. Jealous ex claimed I was cheating and faked a pregnancy to trap me, but it turns out that she was actually the one cheating and the baby wasn't mine. At 28, navigating significant drama has unfortunately become a recent theme in my life. My ex-girlfriend, Sarah, a pseudonym, and I ended our tumultuous 2-year relationship a few months ago after discovering some shocking truths. Sarah and I first crossed paths at a party through mutual friends and quickly clicked. The first year of our relationship was idyllic. We shared similar interests, loved spending time together, and even talked about our future. I'm a software engineer, while Sarah works as a graphic designer. Despite our demanding careers, we made time for each other, enjoying spontaneous weekend getaways, trying new restaurants, and binge-watching TV shows on lazy Sundays. We introduced each other to our families, and everything seemed perfect. But over time, things started to unravel. Initially, Sarah voiced concerns about how much time I spent at work and my close friendships with certain women. I brushed these off as normal relationship issues, but her jealousy and possessiveness soon escalated. She became increasingly upset if I spent time with female friends, even in group settings, and began scrutinizing my phone and questioning every text or call I received. One memorable incident involved dinner with my best friend Mike and his girlfriend while Sarah canceled due to work. That night, Sarah called me in tears, accusing me of lying about my whereabouts after seeing a Snapchat story from a mutual friend who was at the same restaurant. It took hours to calm her down and prove my innocence. Things deteriorated further when I began a major project at work, which required extra hours and late nights. Sarah had a hard time dealing with this, frequently calling me during the day, showing up at my office unannounced, and even following me to catch me in the act. Despite my reassurances, introducing her to my coworkers, sharing my location, and contemplating quitting the project, nothing seemed to ease her anxiety. The constant accusations and lack of trust were exhausting. The breaking point came when Sarah accused me of cheating with a coworker named Emily. After seeing work-related texts between Emily and me, Sarah completely lost it. One evening, she showed up at my office while Emily and I were working on a presentation. Bursting into the conference room, she screamed and cried, accusing Emily of trying to steal me away and hurling insults. Despite my efforts to calm her, she became hysterical, threw a potted plant, which missed me, and security had to escort her out. Emily was understandably shaken, and the next day, I had to explain the situation to my boss. He was sympathetic but warned me that such incidents couldn't happen again. Although Emily remained professional, the atmosphere became awkward between us, and some colleagues began treating me as if I were the guy with the crazy ex-girlfriend. After the incident, it became evident that our relationship couldn't continue. I took a day off work and went to Sarah's apartment to end things. I explained that her constant mistrust and accusations had become unbearable, affecting not just our relationship but also my work and friendships. Sarah didn't handle it well. The conversation quickly devolved into yelling, crying and name-calling. She accused me of never loving her, using her, and cheating throughout our relationship. In the heat of the moment, she even threw some of my belongings out of her apartment window. It was a chaotic scene. As I was leaving, she threatened to ruin my life and make me pay for breaking her heart. At the time, I dismissed it as an emotional outburst, feeling relieved to be free from the relationship. In the weeks that followed, Sarah kept trying to reach me, calling, texting, and even showing up at places she knew I frequented. Her messages ranged from begging for another chance to threatening to expose me as a cheater. I blocked her number on all social media platforms, and eventually, she seemed to get the hint and backed off. I spent the next few weeks focusing on getting my life back on track. Immersing myself in work, hitting the gym more often, and reconnecting with friends I had neglected during my time with Sarah. Things started to feel normal again. Then, last week, while enjoying a quiet Friday evening at home, Sarah unexpectedly showed up at my door. She looked pale and exhausted. Before I could react, she blurted out that she was pregnant and that the baby was mine. Stunned and disbelieving, I struggled to process the news. We had always been careful, and given how our relationship had ended, I wondered if this was a scheme to win me back. Sarah claimed she was about 2 months pregnant, which coincided with the period when our relationship was falling apart. I invited her in, more out of shock than anything else. We sat in my living room, where she explained that she had missed her period, taken a home test, and confirmed it with a doctor. I told her I needed time to process this and offered her a glass of water before retreating to the kitchen to clear my head. When I returned, I found her going through my phone, which I had left on the coffee table. I confronted her, and she claimed she was just checking the time, but it felt like a breach of trust I had grown accustomed to. I told her that before I could accept what she was saying, I needed concrete proof, such as a paternity test. Sarah was upset and accused me of not trusting her, which felt ironic given our history. She pleaded for me to believe her, but all I could think about were the times she had accused me of lying and cheating. I insisted on a paternity test and medical proof of the pregnancy. Sarah grew angry, hurling insults and accusing me of cowardice for not taking responsibility. She threatened to tell our mutual friends and my family that I was abandoning her and the child. Then she stormed off, slamming the door behind her. Since then, I've been a wreck. I can't concentrate at work. I'm struggling with sleep, and I feel constantly on edge. I question whether I'm being too harsh. What if she really is pregnant? Yet another part of me wonders if this is a manipulation tactic. I've spent hours researching false pregnancy claims and paternity rights. Although I've considered reaching out to Sarah, I remember how toxic our relationship had become and how much happier I've been since the breakup. I haven't shared this with anyone, neither my family nor my best friend Mike. I'm unsure of what to do. Am I wrong for not believing her and demanding proof? Should I have handled the situation differently? I keep replaying the conversation in my mind, wondering if I missed something. Sarah did look different, tired and stressed, but could it simply be from the aftermath of our breakup? And why wait 2 months to tell me if she's truly pregnant? The thought of Sarah spreading the news weighs heavily on me. My parents would be devastated if they believed I was abandoning a pregnant girlfriend, and I can only imagine how my friends would react. I've always prided myself on being a reliable person, and the idea of being perceived as a deadbeat dad is distressing. But at the same time, I can't accept this without verification. Sarah's past behavior has eroded my trust in her word alone, and bringing a child into the world is a massive responsibility, one that I'm not sure either of us is prepared for, especially given the state of our relationship. I've been contemplating reaching out to some of our mutual friends to see if they have any insight, but I'm concerned about stirring up rumors before I have a clear understanding of what's really happening. What if Sarah hasn't shared this news with anyone else yet? I don't want to be the one to spread potentially false information. On the other hand, there's a nagging fear that it might be true. I'm not prepared to become a father. Sarah and I had discussed the idea of having children in the distant future, but never as something immediate. The thought of being tied to Sarah for the rest of my life, especially given how toxic our relationship had become, is overwhelming. I've even wondered if the child might not be mine. Given how accusatory Sarah was about my fidelity, could she have been projecting her own issues? Could there have been someone else involved? It's a distressing thought, but I can't ignore any possibility. The more I think about it, the more confused and frustrated I become. I feel trapped with no good options. If I reach out to Sarah for more information, am I opening myself up to further manipulation? If I ignore her, am I potentially abandoning my child? I know I need to act, but I'm paralyzed by indecision. Every option seems fraught with potential pitfalls. I keep hoping she'll reach out with more information or agree to my request for proof, but so far, there's been nothing but silence. Part of me wonders if I should just agree to whatever Sarah wants to keep the peace, but I know that's not the right approach. If there is a child involved, they deserve parents who are committed and certain, not someone who's just trying to avoid conflict. I've even considered seeking legal advice, but that feels like such a drastic step. What if this turns out to be a misunderstanding or a false alarm? Would involving lawyers at this stage be an overreaction? This whole situation has forced me to reevaluate our relationship. Were there signs I missed? Red flags I ignored? I thought I was being a good boyfriend by trying to reassure her and prove my faithfulness, but did I inadvertently enable her behavior? Should I have ended things sooner? It's been a week since Sarah showed up at my door, and I feel no closer to a resolution. Each passing day feels like a ticking clock. If she is pregnant, decisions will need to be made soon, but how can I decide anything when I'm unsure of the basic facts? I keep questioning whether I'm wrong for insisting on proof. Should I have been more sympathetic or more trusting, or am I justified in my caution given our history? I honestly don't know anymore. So here I am, turning to the internet for advice. I realize this is a complex situation, and maybe I haven't provided all the details needed for a full judgment, but I'm at my wit's end. I need an outside perspective. Am I wrong for not believing my ex-girlfriend and insisting on proof of her pregnancy, or am I justified in my caution given our past? What would you do in my situation? Update 1. Hey everyone, It's been about 3 weeks since my original post, and a lot has happened. I wanted to provide an update on the situation with Sarah and her pregnancy claim. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your advice and perspectives have really helped me gain some clarity. Many of you suggested that I should stand firm and insist on proof, while others pointed out that I need to prepare for the possibility that Sarah might actually be pregnant. A few days after our confrontation, Sarah reached out via text. She apologized for her earlier outburst and acknowledged that my doubts were understandable. She agreed to provide medical proof of her pregnancy and to undergo a paternity test once it was feasible. I was relieved to see her taking a more measured approach, though I remained cautious. We arranged to meet at a local coffee shop, a public place to avoid any potential drama and to maintain civility. When we met, Sarah seemed different from how she had appeared at my door. She was calmer and more composed. She handed me an envelope with ultrasound images and a doctor's report confirming her pregnancy. According to the documents, Sarah was about 10 weeks along, which matched the timeline she had previously given me. The ultrasound images were overwhelming. The reality of the situation hit me with a rush of emotions. We spent hours talking. Sarah explained that she had discovered the pregnancy just a week before visiting me and was unsure how to tell me, especially given our rocky breakup. She admitted that her approach, showing up unannounced and making demands, had been misguided and apologized for it. I listened carefully, trying to remain open-minded. I shared my perspective, explaining how her past behavior had made it difficult for me to trust her, and how the sudden news had left me feeling unprepared. We discussed our options. Sarah expressed her desire to keep the baby but understood if I wasn't ready to take on fatherhood. She said she wouldn't pressure me but hoped I would be involved in the child's life. I told her I needed time to process everything, and we agreed to wait for a safe time to perform a non-invasive paternity test, ideally around the 12th week of pregnancy. After our meeting, I felt somewhat better, though still overwhelmed. I decided it was time to inform my family and close friends. I started with my parents, who were stunned. My mom was torn between excitement at the prospect of becoming a grandmother and concern over the circumstances. My dad was skeptical, reminding me of how tumultuous my relationship with Sarah had been. They both supported my decision to get a paternity test and advised me to proceed cautiously. Next, I told my best friend Mike. He was surprised but supportive, offering to be there for me through the process, whatever my decision. He also suggested I might want to consult a lawyer to understand my rights and responsibilities. In the following weeks, Sarah and I kept in touch through text. She updated me on her doctor's visits and how she was feeling. Navigating this new dynamic with someone from my past was strange. Then, about a week ago, Sarah called me, panicked. She said she had started bleeding and was heading to the hospital. I rushed to meet her there. The next few hours were a blur of medical tests, anxious waiting, and intense conversations with doctors. Eventually, we learned that Sarah had suffered a miscarriage. The doctor explained that early miscarriages are common and not anyone's fault. I was stunned. I hadn't fully come to terms with the idea of becoming a father, and now it was all over. Sarah was devastated. Despite our issues, seeing her in such pain was heartbreaking. I stayed with her until she was discharged. The drive back to her place was quiet, and when we arrived, Sarah broke down. She apologized again for her handling of the situation, saying she had been scared and unsure how to proceed. She acknowledged that her past behavior, her jealousy and accusations, had been wrong and that losing the baby made her realize how much she had messed up between us. I listened, feeling a complex mix of emotions. I was saddened by the loss of a potential child, despite my uncertainty about fatherhood. Yet I also felt a sense of relief, which then made me feel guilty. A part of me still wondered if the whole situation had been real. I asked Sarah if she had shared the news with anyone else. She said no, that she had been waiting until after the first trimester to tell her family and friends. So only my parents, Mike and I knew about the situation. That night, we talked extensively about the pregnancy, our failed relationship and what might come next. Sarah mentioned she planned to start therapy to address her trust issues and jealousy. She didn't ask to reconcile or manipulate the situation, which I appreciated. I told her I needed some time and space to process everything. She understood and agreed that it would be best if we didn't see each other for a while. As I left Sarah's apartment that night, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. The emotional roller coaster of the past few weeks had been draining. Now a week later, I'm still trying to process everything. I've started seeing a therapist to help me work through my feelings about the situation. Having a neutral person to talk to has been beneficial. I've also been reflecting on my relationship with Sarah and my own actions. While I still stand by my decision to ask for proof of the pregnancy, I recognize there were moments when I could have communicated better or been more understanding of her insecurities. Sarah and I have exchanged a few texts since that night. She's been attending therapy and feels it's helping her understand her behavior more clearly. She's apologized again for how she treated me and for the way she initially handled the pregnancy news. I'm uncertain about our future. Romantically, it seems unlikely we'll get back together given everything that's transpired. However, I'm open to the possibility of building a friendship once we've both had time to heal and grow. Regarding the pregnancy, I still have doubts. The medical documents appeared genuine, and the hospital confirmed the miscarriage. Yet, given our history, a part of me remains skeptical. For my own peace of mind, I've decided to accept that it was real and move forward. This experience has taught me valuable lessons about communication, trust, and the enduring impact of past actions on relationships. I'm trying to apply these lessons to become a better person and partner in the future. My parents and Mike have been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. They've listened, offered advice, and simply been there for me. I'm thankful for their strong support system. Looking back at my initial post, I can see how bewildered and unsettled I was. I still believe I was right to ask for proof, but I now understand why Sarah might have reacted the way she did. Fear and hormones can drive people to act out of character. In response to those who asked, no, I haven't shared the details with any of our mutual friends. Sarah and I agreed that it's a private matter and that spreading it would only stir up unnecessary drama and gossip. As for work, things have fortunately settled down. The tension with Emily and my other co-workers has eased, and I've focused on my projects, which has been a welcome distraction. I realize this update might not meet everyone's expectations. Life seldom follows neat, clear-cut paths. It's messy and often leaves us with more questions than answers. I'm still processing everything and know it will take time to fully come to terms with it. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time, concentrating on my personal growth and healing. I appreciate all the advice and support, it's been invaluable. If anything significant changes, I'll provide another update. For now, I'm focused on moving forward, learning from this experience, and working towards a better future. Update 2. I had hoped to conclude my story with the last update. It seemed like a somewhat decent ending, but life has a way of complicating things. It's been about 2 months since my last post, and my anger from everything that's happened hasn't subsided. Just when I thought the situation with Sarah couldn't get more complicated, I was proven wrong. After the miscarriage, Sarah and I had limited contact. We exchanged occasional texts, mostly with her updating me on her therapy progress and me responding politely. I was still working through everything and trying to move on. Work was going well. I'd immersed myself in a new project, which served as a welcome distraction. Relations with my co-workers, including Emily, had mostly returned to normal, and I was even starting to consider dating again, though I hadn't gone on any dates yet. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. When I answered, a man's voice asked if I was my name. After I confirmed, he introduced himself as Robert and said we needed to talk about Sarah. My stomach sank. I asked who he was, and he revealed that he was Sarah's ex-boyfriend. Apparently, they had been together for a few weeks during a break Sarah and I had taken. I remembered that break. It was after a particularly bad argument, and we had spent about 2 months apart. Robert contacted me to share some information he believed I needed to hear. We arranged to meet at a local bar the following evening. The next 24 hours were filled with anxiety as I considered the implications of what he might reveal. Despite my reluctance, I knew I had to face whatever was coming. When we met, Robert appeared surprisingly composed. He was about my age and seemed like an ordinary guy. He bought us a beer and got straight to the point. Sarah had lied to me. The baby wasn't mine, it was his. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Robert explained that he and Sarah had continued their relationship on and off even after Sarah and I had reconciled. Their last encounter had occurred about a week before Sarah and I broke up for good. He showed me text messages between him and Sarah from months earlier. In them, Sarah expressed her unhappiness with me and her fear of being alone, revealing that she had stayed in the relationship out of fear. The texts included her panicking about the pregnancy and her plans. One particularly shocking message from Sarah to Robert, dated just days before she came to me with the pregnancy claim, read, "I have a plan. I'm going to tell my name, the baby is his. He makes good money and he's always wanted kids. He'll take care of us." The realization that she had cheated on me and tried to manipulate me into raising another man's child was devastating. Robert, feeling guilty after the miscarriage, thought I deserved to know the truth. I thanked him for his honesty, though part of me wished I could go back to being ignorant. We finished our beers in silence, each lost in thought. Before leaving, Robert apologized for his role in the situation. I couldn't bring myself to hate him, as I appreciated his decision to come clean. After Robert left, I sat at the bar for a long time, trying to absorb what I had learned. The bartender, sensing my distress, gave me a free drink. I went home that night feeling numb, unable to eat or sleep. The following day, I called in sick to work. I needed time to process my emotions. I spent the day oscillating between anger and disbelief. How could Sarah have done this? How could she lie so comprehensively? And how had I been so blind? Reflecting on her previous accusations of cheating and her jealous outbursts, it became clear they were projections of her own behavior. After a day of contemplation, I knew I had to confront Sarah. I couldn't let this go unanswered. I texted her to arrange a meeting, which she likely thought was a routine check-in. We met at the same coffee shop where she had shown me the ultrasound pictures. As soon as she saw me, she knew something was amiss. Before she could speak, I laid everything out. The meeting with Robert, the text messages, and all the new information I had. At first, Sarah seemed poised to deny it, but then she broke down in tears, apologizing and saying she never intended for things to go this far. I asked how she could lie so deeply and attempt to trap me into raising a child that wasn't mine. She explained she was scared and desperate, hoping that if she could get me to accept the baby, everything would work out. I told her that what she had done was unforgivable. She had not only betrayed my trust in the worst way but also been willing to drag an innocent child into her deceit. Sarah pleaded for forgiveness, saying she would do anything to make amends, but I knew there was no fixing this. The trust between us was irrevocably shattered. I told her I never wanted to see or hear from her again and hoped she would continue therapy because she clearly needed help. Then I stood up and walked out, ignoring her desperate pleas for me to stay. The next few days were a blur. I informed my parents and Mike of what had happened, and they were furious on my behalf. My mom wanted to call Sarah and confront her, but I asked her not to. I just wanted to be done with the situation. I also decided to inform a few mutual friends to preempt any potential misinformation from Sarah. I didn't go into all the details. I simply said Sarah had cheated and lied about the pregnancy. Most were shocked and supportive. One friend admitted she had suspected Sarah might be cheating and had seen her with another man but didn't realize it was serious. She apologized for not coming forward sooner. I was hurt that she hadn't said anything earlier, but I understood her reluctance to get involved. At work, I finally confided in Emily about everything that had transpired. Her response was incredibly supportive and understanding. She admitted she had always felt something was off about Sarah but had held back from saying anything negative about my girlfriend. Through all this, Emily and I have grown closer, and I'm starting to see her in a new light. Who knows, there might be potential for something more in the future. Since our confrontation at the coffee shop, I haven't heard from Sarah. I've blocked her number and all her social media accounts. A mutual friend informed me that Sarah has moved back in with her parents and continues with therapy. Part of me hopes she gets the help she needs, but mostly, I just want her out of my life permanently. Reflecting on our relationship, it's clear now how toxic it was. Sarah's jealousy and insecurity weren't just minor issues, they were indicators of deeper problems. I now realize I should have ended things much sooner. I've been contemplating why I stayed with Sarah for so long and endured her behavior. I think part of it was fear of being alone. Another part was the misguided hope that I could fix her and earn her trust, and, I'm ashamed to admit, a part of me enjoyed feeling needed, even if it was in an unhealthy way. Coming to terms with the loss of the future I had envisioned has been one of the hardest parts. Even though I had doubts about the pregnancy, a part of me had started to imagine what being a father might be like. Having that possibility snatched away, only to discover it was all a lie, has been painful. However, I also feel relieved. Relieved that I learned the truth before it was too late and that I'm no longer bound to Sarah for the rest of my life. In the past few weeks, I've focused on myself. I've resumed running, a hobby I had abandoned during my relationship with Sarah. I'm reading more, spending time with friends, and even considering a solo trip. Work has been a great distraction. I've immersed myself in a new project at work, and my boss has noticed. He's hinted at a potential promotion if I continue performing well. It's nice to have something positive to concentrate on. As for dating, I'm not ready to dive into anything serious yet. I need time to heal and rebuild my trust. But I'm open to meeting someone new when the time is right. This experience has taught me a lot about myself, relationships, and trust. I've learned the importance of trusting your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. To those who followed my story from the start, thank you for your support and advice. You helped me gain clarity when I was too close to the situation to see it. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this. Trust is invaluable. And once it's broken, it's incredibly hard to restore. Don't stay in a relationship where you're constantly questioning your partner or yourself. And if someone reveals their true nature, believe them the first time. As for me, I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are more difficult than others, but overall, I'm doing okay. I'm looking forward to the future and confident that I can face whatever challenges come my way. This will be my final update on this matter. It's time for me to close this chapter and move on. Thank you all again for your support throughout this turbulent journey. Here's to new beginnings and better days ahead. It's been about 10 months since my last update, and I didn't think I'd be writing another one. I thought the chapter with Sarah was closed for good, but life has a way of surprising us. After everything with Sarah and the revelation about her cheating, I focused on moving forward. I threw myself into work, continued with therapy, and began rebuilding my social life. Things were going well. The promotion my boss hinted at came through, and I'm now leading my own team on a major project, which has been challenging but rewarding. Emily and I have been working closely, and I have to admit there's been some flirting between us. We haven't acted on it yet, partly because I'm wary of getting involved with a coworker after everything that happened with Sarah, but the attraction is definitely there. Then, about a month ago, everything changed again. While at the grocery store one evening, just picking up dinner supplies, I ran into Robert, yes, the same Robert who had revealed the truth about the baby. We were both stunned by the coincidence. Robert asked if I wanted to grab a coffee and catch up. I hesitated at first, questioning whether I really wanted to revisit everything, but my curiosity got the better of me and I agreed. Over coffee, Robert updated me on Sarah's situation. After our last encounter, she'd had a complete breakdown, quitting her job, moving back in with her parents, and diving into intensive therapy. Robert had been in touch with her parents, feeling a sense of responsibility for her current state. He told me that Sarah had recently discovered she was pregnant again, and this time, it was definitely his child. Although they weren't rekindling their relationship, Robert intended to co-parent with her. I was filled with anger. Why should Sarah get to have a baby after deceiving me about the last one? Yet I also felt a sense of relief, glad that I wasn't in Robert's position, tied to Sarah for the foreseeable future. Robert seemed genuinely excited about fatherhood but admitted he was anxious about co-parenting with Sarah given their complicated past. He mentioned that Sarah had made significant progress in therapy, addressing her trust issues and manipulative behavior, but he remained cautious. Before we parted ways, Robert hesitated and said, "There's something else you should know. Sarah's been asking about you and wants to apologize in person for everything she did." I told Robert I'd think it over but made no promises. In the days following, I couldn't shake the thoughts of what Robert had shared. I discussed it with my therapist, trying to navigate my emotions. On one hand, I had no obligation to meet Sarah or hear her out. Her actions had been unforgivable, and I had every right to keep her out of my life. On the other hand, a small part of me wondered if hearing her apology might bring some closure. After much consideration, I decided to meet with Sarah. I figured facing it head-on was better than always wondering what if. I asked Robert to arrange the meeting, making it clear that this was a one-time occurrence. We met at a park on a Saturday. I chose a public park for our meeting, neutral ground to avoid any potential drama. When Sarah arrived, I noticed how different she looked, smaller and less confident. She sat on the bench next to me, maintaining a respectful distance. For a moment, we were silent. Then she took a deep breath and began. "I know nothing I say can undo what I did," she started. "But I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for everything. For the cheating, the lies, and for trying to trap you with a baby that wasn't yours. It was inexcusable, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." She went on to explain that she had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which shed light on but didn't excuse her past behavior. She spoke about the intensive therapy she was undergoing, learning to manage her emotions and insecurities in healthier ways. "I'm not sharing this to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I know I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I understand how much I hurt you, and I'm doing everything I can to ensure I never treat anyone that way again." After she finished, I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I told her that while I appreciated her apology, forgiveness wasn't something I could offer, at least not yet. The wounds were still too fresh, and the betrayal too profound. However, I did express hope that she would continue her therapy and work on becoming a better person, especially now that she was going to be a mother. Sarah nodded, thanking me for listening and agreeing to meet. As she got up to leave, she paused and said, "I truly am happy for you. Robert told me about your promotion and about Emily. I hope things work out for you. You deserve to be happy." With that, she walked away. I remained on that bench for a long time, reflecting on what had just happened. It wasn't the dramatic showdown I might have imagined, but rather a quiet closing of a chapter, a final end to that part of my life. In the weeks since our meeting, I've spent a lot of time thinking about Sarah, our relationship, and everything that transpired. I've come to realize that while I may never forgive her actions, I can release the anger I've been holding on to. It's not about excusing what she did, but about freeing myself from the negative emotions that have weighed me down. In my personal life, things are finally looking up. You might recall I mentioned some flirtation with Emily. About a week after my meeting with Sarah, Emily and I decided to address the situation directly. We've chosen to explore a relationship, with the understanding that we'll maintain professionalism at work and keep our boss informed to prevent any conflicts of interest. It's still early, but being with Emily feels refreshingly different from any past relationship. The trust and communication we have are levels beyond what I experienced with Sarah. We're taking it slow, aware of the potential challenges of dating a coworker, but so far, things have been promising. My friends and family have been very supportive of this new development. Mike even joked that he'd seen Emily and me ending up together ever since the crazy ex-girlfriend incident at the office. My parents are just glad to see me happy again. Work is going smoothly as well. The project I'm leading is progressing well, and my team has come together effectively. It's gratifying to see the results of our hard work starting to show. Regarding Sarah and Robert, I've chosen to keep my distance. Robert occasionally updates me, which I appreciate, but I've made it clear that I don't want to be involved in their lives. I wish them well, particularly for the sake of their child, but that chapter is firmly closed for me. To everyone who's followed my story from the start, thank you for your support and advice. Your input was invaluable, especially during those challenging times right after I discovered Sarah's deception. I'm uncertain about the future. My relationship with Emily is still new and its direction remains to be seen. My career is on an upward path, but I know there will be hurdles ahead. Life is inherently unpredictable. However, for the first time in a long while, I'm genuinely excited about what's to come. I feel like I've been given a fresh start, a chance to apply all the lessons I've learned and build a life that's truly fulfilling. This will be my final update on this matter. It's time to close this chapter and focus on the future. Thanks again to everyone for your support throughout this tumultuous journey. Here's to new beginnings, hard-earned wisdom, and the endless possibilities that lie ahead. Am I the A for renting my house to a friend with poor financial habits? Now, she's offering to buy the house for a ridiculously low price, even just $1. Some backstory. I, 31, grew up pretty poor. I don't remember it well, but at one point my parents and I were only able to afford to eat beans and rice. My parents have since been able to pull out of poverty, and while they aren't rich, they are comfortable, and I have used a lot of what I experienced as a kid as motivation to be super careful with my money. I got a job in high school, worked odd jobs on the side, saved up every penny, rode my bike everywhere instead of driving and paying for gas, and by the time I moved out of my parents' place I had a little over $17K in my savings. I don't have that much tucked away anymore, but I have investments and emergency funds and take my family's finances incredibly seriously, as I never want my children to experience what I did as a kid. Mine and my husband's financial choices afforded us the opportunity to purchase a home in the beginning of 2015, which we bought 50/50 with his mother. He paid his half up front. I made a large down payment and his mother covered the rest with an escrow agreement that I would pay off what she had purchased. I have since completely paid my half and the house is fully owned by myself and my husband. It's a 4-bedroom, 1 and a 1/2 bath, 2-story home with a finished basement, attached 2-car garage, on a double lot. We got the house for an absolute steal at only $118K, for sale by owners. Since purchasing we have installed a fence, updated the oven, washer and dryer, water heater, furnace, and paid for materials to have all the interior rooms repainted. The only updates it needs are purely cosmetic, as the exterior paint is an ugly brown-pink color, which we have started repainting and need to finish. The hardwood floors have some distortion due to it being a 100+YR old house and us having dogs when we lived there. And the bathroom could use an update, but structurally speaking doesn't need one. Needless to say, on a scale of 1-5, with 1 being tear down the house and start over, and 5 being it's ready to put on the market to sell for $300K today, the house is sitting at a 3.5 on a 4. Backstory complete, let's get into what has become my biggest headache for the past 4 years. I have a friend, let's call her Carly, 27, who had incredibly similar experiences to me growing up, but struggles with finances and has never seemed to get the hang of keeping any sort of savings over $50 at a time. I'm not sure if it's a lack of self-control, or that she's simply too focused in the moment when she gets paid and doesn't think to look in the long term, but she consistently makes her lack of funds everyone else's problem. I don't blame her for having issues with money, as learning to create a budget isn't exactly taught in school, and it took me years to learn to find a healthy balance, and the freedom of being able to buy whatever you want with no restrictions is super tempting, but at some point you have to learn to take responsibility. During the course of our friendship, I have helped her build countless budgets based on my own. I made roughly the same amount of money as her, but each time they failed for whatever reason. We tried different ways to try to trick her brain into realizing that money sitting in her account wasn't to be touched, as everything needed to be used for bills, etc., and each time she would wind up still using every penny. It finally came to the point where I refused to help her with her budget anymore, because she never listens to my advice. And when I pointed out the easiest and fastest method to get her spending under control was to get a payee, she said she didn't need to be treated like a child who receives an allowance. Fair enough. I washed my hands of that topic. Carly moved out of her mom's house a little over 6 years ago and into a mutual friend's place. Let's call her Tia, 27. As far as I have been told by Tia, Carly paid little to nothing in rent, even though they both worked at the same company and made close to the same salary. Carly's living space was an absolute disaster. She moved into the basement, and it was lucky if there was even a walkway to get to the washer and dryer. She constantly asked me to come over to help her clean and organize her space, and because I'm a people pleaser, I would always agree. Each time we would make significant progress, but then by the next weekend when I would come over to help again, it was as if a tornado had gone through her space in the course of the week. I have no idea how she was able to fit so much stuff into that tiny space. She would never clean up on her own or make any sort of effort to put anything away, and would always wait for me to come over. And if anyone were to come down to watch us, it was always me cleaning or organizing while she sat back and dictated where everything went. Getting her to donate or throw anything away was like pulling teeth, as somehow even the smallest scrap of paper had some sort of sentimental value. After a little over a year of them living together, Tia couldn't handle it anymore and asked Carly to find some other living situation. She wasn't going to throw her onto the street, but she literally couldn't live with Carly any longer. There are a lot of other things that built up that caused this, but I won't go into that here. It just so happened that my husband and I had purchased a second home around this same time. What we had owed on the first was paid off. My husband had come into an inheritance, and we were able to look for our forever home that better fit our wants and needs. The best part for us is that the new house was literally a 5-minute drive from the old house. We had yet to decide whether we wanted to sell or rent our first house when Carly approached us with the offer of renting it from us. She and 2 other friends were looking to move in together, and with the house being as big as it was, there was plenty of space for all of them to have their own room and privacy. Since we hadn't yet decided if we wanted to sell, and there were 3 renters already lined up, we decided to use it as a means of passive income to invest in our future, and then down the road we would revisit whether or not we wanted to sell it or keep it as a rental. The red flag that I didn't initially pick up on was that Carly was already referring to the house as her house, to her 2 potential roommates even before moving in or signing a lease, so by the time it came to them all moving in, Carly had driven the other 2 girls to back out. The way I had written the original lease agreement was that the rent was flexible depending on how many tenants there were. So for the 3 of them they would have only been paying $750 total per month, and if only one person was renting it would be $400 per month. In this area you can expect to rent a bedroom for $400, so this was a crazy good deal as we really didn't need the money, and it was mainly to pay for insurance, power, heat, and property taxes. In the 4 years that Carly has lived in that house, rent has gone up 4 times. Once to $500 a month because the power bill went up and we needed to adjust for that. The second time to $550 a month due to the same reason, the third time to $750 after she got a new job, and last year in October. More on that later. Also in the 4 years she has lived here, 2 separate opportunities for roommates have backed out. Each time because she was setting the rules and referring to the property as her house, despite having zero claim to it and the fact that each person would have their own lease agreement. When she first moved in she was working a minimum wage paying job and she was my friend, hence the low monthly rent. But a year and a half ago got a new job at a local university, 30-minute drive away, that pays very well and has great benefits, but somehow she manages to blow through her entire paycheck on I don't even know what. Also during the course of these past 4 years she wound up owing me $750 in back rent as she repeatedly was unable to pay me the full monthly amount due to repeated miscalculations in her budget and overspending on garbage, which she then stuffed into mine and my husband's property. My husband and I realized after a couple years of being landlords that we aren't cut out for it. We have too much on our own plates and had no time for upkeep, and Carly wasn't holding up her end of the rental agreement that she had signed. We talked about it and settled on the decision to sell, but we of course didn't want to throw Carly onto the street and informed her of our plan. She proposed to buy it from us and started going through the route of getting a loan. During this process she realized that the house wasn't what she wanted. She wanted land and the house itself was far too big for her. She told us that, and we understood, and I even helped drive her to meet with realtors so she could check out other options to buy houses elsewhere. But each one fell through as she discovered that she wasn't going to get a new homeowner's discount or bargain with any loans that she looked at, and all of the loans required at minimum of a 10% down payment, which she of course didn't have. This is where the entitlement starts. Carly wasn't going to be able to buy a home, at least not the home she wanted, and settled on buy our house. We had briefly talked at the very beginning of her tenancy that we may consider a rent-to-own situation, but no agreement had been made. No sale price had been decided, no appraisals or property inspections completed, nothing had been signed. It was simply a comment that we had made in passing and then chatted about later, again in passing. She took it as gospel truth and said that if she bought the house that she expected the 2.5 years of rent she had paid us to be computed off the total sale of the house. I reminded her that we never signed anything about a rent-to-own and informed her that wasn't how this was going to work. Her next tactic was to try to suggest that we quit claim deed the property to her, again without her paying us anything additional to the 2.5 years worth of rent she had already paid us. How this works is that whoever owns the property grants the title deed to whoever they're giving it to, and it's generally a lot faster and cheaper than going through the process of buying a house, but there is still generally something paid for the property when the title is transferred. At this point she'd only paid about $10K in rent, more than half of which went to paying for utilities that we covered instead of having her pay them, and property taxes, and she was making it sound as if she wasn't going to give us anything beyond that. I again told her that this would not be a viable option. The house was in great condition, and even with the exterior paint and repairs to the floors and bathroom was worth at least what we had paid for it. $118K. She tried to spin it that she was doing us a favor by taking it off our hands, as I had expressed to her that we were tired of being landlords and it was more effort than we had time for. Her last attempt at buying the house on her own was to offer me $1. That's right, a single dollar. I will admit, I don't know if this was a failed joke attempt on her part, but it certainly fell flat and I was so mad I was shaking, though I laughed it off. Side note, during the time she has lived in the house, my husband and I have some stuff stored in the garage, as Carly parked on the street due to convenience, and she suggested on multiple occasions that she start charging us rent for storing things in our own house when none of it was in her way whatsoever, and we had already made it clear that if she purchased the house that we would remove all of our property. At the end of 2022, Carly started dating Reggie, 28M. They were long distance and would take turns visiting each other, and Carly made the comment to Reggie that we were looking to sell the house, and we threw out a couple numbers, the very lowest being $100K, but said that we of course would have to have an appraisal and look at market value, etc. He offered to buy it from us and said that he would start the process in March-April of 2023. I was relieved, my husband was relieved, Carly was relieved, everything was looking great. Some information about Reggie at the time. He is a retired Marine. He gets a monthly check from the government for close to $2,000 on top of his well-paying job. I'm guessing based on what Carly told me, but at the time he made his offer he was probably making between $4,500 $5,000 a month. When March-April came around, Carly and Reggie informed us that he would not be able to afford paying both his rent where he lived and a monthly mortgage payment and wouldn't be able to start the purchase process then, but would start the purchase process in October instead when he planned to move in with Carly. Before Reggie moved in, an ex-friend offered to rent a room in the house from Carly and pay her despite subletting being clearly stated in the lease agreement as prohibited. Carly so generously offered to pay us some of the amount that she was paid. The agreement fell through and the friend did not stay in the room. I'm not exactly sure why he chose to do things the way he did, but Reggie didn't start the purchase process at all until after he had moved and quit his job, meaning the only source of income he had to show to a mortgage company was the monthly stipend from the government, which even with a veteran's loan doesn't work as proof of income. When he moved in, rent increased to $1,000 a month, which is still under value for the size of the home, and a brand new rental agreement was written and signed stating that if they had not started the buying process to purchase the house from us by mid-April of 2024 that we would not be renewing the lease, nor would we work with them on month-to-month rental options, as myself and my husband are completely and totally over this mess. We also stated in the rental agreement that we were not going to list the house for sale as a sign of good faith to allow Reggie and Carly first choice on the house to buy it. Here's a rapid-fire list of things that have happened since October. Reggie paid the $750 that Carly owed to me in back rent. Carly and Reggie informed us at some point either late November or early December that they would not be buying the house as the repairs required amounted to more than $50K. I don't know where they got this number, as I have budgeted on multiple occasions to redo the flooring and it would be less than $15K to redo the entire house, nor would repainting cost more than a few thousand, or the bathroom remodel, as they intended to do the work themselves. We repaired the major damage in the bathroom recently for less than $500. They could not acquire rental housing due to having 3 cats and will indeed be staying in the house. We informed them we are not renewing the lease and reiterated our reasoning. I made the mistake of telling Carly what we owed on our mortgage and they turned around and offered us $50K to buy the house from us, less than 1/3 the market value of the house if we sold it as is. We politely declined and then promptly went home and screamed into pillows. They have repeatedly told Tia that they are desperate for money to the point of debating setting up a GoFundMe, all the while Carly has gotten 2 brand new tattoos in the past year and has an international trip she has paid for in full that she is going on at the end of March, and Reggie has still not acquired even a part-time job. We emergency installed a water heater that Reggie paid for that I will have fully paid back by the end of March. Carly quit her job and now the only income they will have after the end of this week is Reggie's military stipend. Carly nonchalantly stated that we would have to renegotiate rent for this month and next month. There will be no negotiations. She made a bad decision and will have to live with the consequences of her actions. The most recent thing she did was text me 2 days ago asking if she could pay me in food for this month's rent. Knowing her, the amount she will pay will amount to only a couple meals and maybe $75 in groceries instead of the roughly $500 that they will owe. I owe Reggie roughly $500 left to pay off the last bit of the water heater. I jokingly answered that the electricity and insurance companies don't accept food as payment, so neither can I. She then offered to pay me what it would cost to pay these expenses and then the rest she would pay in food. I have not responded. It's been a day and a half. They will pay me in cash and nothing else. I'm done. No discussion. My warning to all of you, don't mix business and friends without getting to know said friends very well first. If I had known what I would be walking into, I never would have allowed her to move it. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Why are you allowing her to dictate anything? Evict her. OP. I'd love to, but where we live requires 60 days notice and that gives them an in to stay past their lease. They conveniently dropped the news on me that she quit her job when it was too late for me to give the required time for written eviction notice. Comment 2. Have you been inside the house since these 2 freeloaders moved in? I am thinking that they may have destroyed some parts of the house, which is why they came up with the $50K in repairs. Let them know that either they get all their crap out or you will just put it out for the trash. If it is worth anything, you could sell it for some of the money that they owe you, but I would bet most of the stuff is just crap. If they don't move out when you say the contract is over, it is 100% time to evict them. But if that happens, check with a lawyer and see if you can cut off all utilities, water, electricity, gas and any other utility. You want them out before they destroy the inside of the house. If they do, make sure to take pictures and put them on social media and let every one of your friends know exactly what she did. Make sure that no other friend is dumb enough to let them move in with them. OP, luckily I have been inside the house. I was there on Sunday, and was able to do a quick walkthrough and everything seems to be okay right now. But I'll keep that in mind for when we deliver the eviction letter update 1. I should clarify. The reason we let Carly move in the first place is because she made it sound like she literally had nowhere to go. She'd spun a tale that her home life with her mom was not safe. Untrue. She made it sound like Tia was literally kicking her out that day. Also untrue, and she panickedly hounded me relentlessly in person and over the phone until my husband and I made a super quick decision to let her rent from us. I've learned this is a method of manipulation. I've reached out to an attorney. We talked about everything that's happened. They read through the lease and gave us a few options. We wait until May 1st when Carly and Reggie are supposed to be out of the house. If they're not out, delivery intent to sell notice. That gives them 90 days to vacate the property after the lease is up. Not ideal. We deliver the intent to sell now. That means they have until mid-June to GTFO. Still not ideal, but better. If they're still in the house past the 90 days, we file an unlawful detainer and the cops forcibly kick them out. We can't evict because we don't have the grounds. Even with all of this, the courts just about everywhere are against landlords and in favor of tenants. The minute their rent is late, we then have grounds for eviction. That gives them 14 days to pay or GTFO. But if they pay, the eviction process ends. So still not ideal. They can't get squatters' rights because they haven't been here long enough. I'm going to be telling her mother everything she's done, because I'm pretty sure she has no idea. I'm also telling all our mutual friends. I've done a lot of self-reflection lately before writing this post and came to several conclusions. I know she's not my friend. I had a false idea that I was helping someone that I saw as a friend, and in the end I enabled her shitty behavior. I'm aware I'm a doormat. I know I don't know how to set boundaries. I spent a lot of time on the phone and in professional offices over the last few days. I'm on a waiting list to see a therapist and learn to set boundaries, because I don't ever want to teach my kids my bad behaviors and habits that got me into this mess. And for all of you who mentioned that it is a miracle my husband is still with me, he was with me along the whole process. I never did anything without his consent, since we own the house 50/50ths. I'm taking most of the blame because Carly was my friend. I apologized to him and we had a deep conversation about working on communication. He apologized for not seeing that my friend wasn't who she claimed to be and didn't warn me I was being manipulated. Update 2. This is hopefully the last update. Sorry it took so long to get back on here. They're out and have been since April 1st. And no, it wasn't a joke despite the date. Life's been insane and I've been so overwhelmed with this whole situation that it's been hard to get back on here and face it all again. They left the house a mess, but that's not surprising. They claimed they didn't have the time or money to finish even though there was a whole month left on their lease. Honestly, I'm happy that they're out, though I am pissed about the mess. I'd rather clean up a bit instead of fighting them in court to kick them out. I told her mom and showed her everything, and her mom was angry as well and told her off a couple times for 1, leaving the house in the state they did, and 2, treating me, and others, the way she has. I've also started therapy and am working on setting boundaries and getting over my people-pleasing. The last I spoke to Carly was yesterday because I learned from a friend that she joked about leaving the house a mess on purpose because she was mad at me. I confronted her and asked why, even if it was a joke, because even jokes have some basis in truth. She said that it was because emotions were running high and she was stressed at the end when they were getting ready to leave, that she was frustrated with how little I did with the house while she was there, despite me repairing everything that needed it ASAP, and she was mad my husband and I stored some of our things in the garage. I explained that 1, it's our house, we can do that. 2, there was plenty of space in the garage for her things as well, and 3, none of her vehicles would have fit in the garage anyway as they were all too long and none of them ran, so she couldn't have even gotten them into the garage. Carly also had to junk out 2 of the vehicles she left behind, even though she'd explained she had someone who could keep them on their property so she could work on them. I don't understand any of her logic. I'm done trying to figure it out. Last thing she said to me was that she was sorry, though I don't believe she genuinely is and is just saying it to make herself feel better. Thanks to everyone that's read and commented and given advice. It's been greatly appreciated. Sorry if it's a bit anticlimactic of an ending, but I'm relieved that it's done. Some good news is that we're working with a buyer now and are making steps towards selling for what the place is actually worth. My ex-girlfriend claims my current girlfriend manipulated her into ending our 4-year relationship. Am I the asshole? I, 28 years old, am really confused about the events of the last month. My ex-girlfriend Julie, 29 years old, thinks that my current girlfriend Mindy, 28 years old, is manipulative and sabotaged our 4-year relationship. I was in a loving relationship with Julie for the last 4 years. We met through some mutual friends. Julie and I were very compatible in terms of our love for outdoor activities and running. We have very similar lifestyles and supported each other well for the last 4 years. We have also been living together for the last 3 years. We even discussed getting married during the summer. Everything was great and I was planning to propose to her over the holidays. However, I started to see changes in behavior in Julie around September. She was acting distant and looked stressed. It was quite noticeable and I was worried. I trust her with all my heart and I could not imagine she would be cheating on me. However, she did spend more time by herself. Around the same time, Julie's friend Mindy messaged me privately and asked me if I could meet her secretly, as she wanted to tell me something about Julie. Mindy and Julie work together and I've known Mindy ever since I started dating Julie. I was surprised, but to be honest, I assumed the worst. I met her at a cafe after work. She asked me if things were going on between Julie and me. She told me that Julie told her that she was planning to leave me soon. This was a total shock to me. I asked her if there was anyone else that Julie was interested in and she told me no. Julie confided in her that she was not sure about marrying me. She told me she just had to tell me this as she did not want me to be blindsided. I was devastated. I started putting more effort into making our relationship more exciting and planning more dates, etc. Mindy was also helping me through this time, and telling me more about what Julie told her. Eventually, before Thanksgiving, Julie told me that she loved me, but she wanted to take a break for a month to live alone. She said that she just wanted to live alone for a month to make sure she wanted to marry me. I was completely heartbroken. I asked her if she wanted to pursue someone else. She told me that was not the case, and I better not do anything stupid either. She loves me with all her heart, but she just wants to stay away from me to make sure that she is marrying me for love, and not because she is used to being with me. I did not understand that at all. I told her that if she is not sure after 4 years, if she wants to marry me, then maybe we should just break up. We had a big fight and broke up after a few days. As our lease was ending, we decided to part ways in December. She got a new apartment and I kept our old apartment and just took her name off the lease. After the breakup, I was feeling very lonely, as I was not used to being in the apartment alone. I didn't want to keep on being sad and hence invited a bunch of friends for a New Year's party. I also invited Mindy. We had a good time, and my friends were doing their best to cheer me up. Mindy also mingled with my friends and it was good. Mindy decided to stay back to help me clean up and we hooked up that night. I felt guilty, but Mindy did cheer me up. Since then, we have hung out almost daily at my place. I am still sad about Julie, but I won't lie that being with Mindy does make me feel happy. She is sweet and caring. Last Sunday, we woke up and someone was banging on the door. I went to open it and it was Julie. She looked furious and started yelling at me. She kept on accusing me of cheating on her. I told her I most certainly did not cheat on her, and she was the one who broke up with me. Mindy was also at my apartment. Julie was just angry at both of us. She started calling Mindy a manipulative bitch and told me that Mindy was the one who suggested to her that she should take some time away from me to understand her true feelings. I calmed her down and asked her to explain herself. She told me that ever since our marriage talk, she told Mindy about it and Mindy kept on asking Julie if she was sure about marrying me. Mindy suggested she take some time to herself to understand her true feelings and that I will understand and give her space. When I said no, Mindy convinced her that I was so controlling that I could not even give her 1 month to herself and convinced her to break up with me. Mindy told me that she did not say any such things, and these were all Julie's ideas and she was just there during these conversations. She did tell Julie that she told me about some of the things so that I get a chance to make things right with her over the last few months. That made Julie more angry and she started accusing me of emotionally cheating on her. Julie told me that the last few weeks have made her realize that we were meant to be together, but she now cannot believe I could move on from a 4-year relationship in a week. On one hand, I want to believe Julie, but she broke up with me for no fault of my own. Mindy was there for me when I was down, but now I also doubt her. She suddenly started talking to me out of the blue as we were never really close before, and immediately became my support after the breakup although Julie was her close friend. Am I the AH to emotionally cheat on Julie? Should I have told her about Mindy's texts? Should I have not moved on from her so quickly, even though Julie broke up with me? I was just hurting and Mindy was right there to support me. I need advice from someone with a clear mind on what the fuck is going on. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Sounds like you and Julie need to talk privately and discuss what Mindy said to each of you. As others said, this sounds all too convenient. Mindy was in both of your ears telling you both what she wanted you to hear to orchestrate this whole thing. Please reach out to Julie and ask her to talk to you alone. Even if you both don't get back together, I'm sure you care for each other deeply and she would want you to be with someone who cares about you and won't manipulate you, and her. Her manipulation of you is more direct but Julie is the victim as well. OP, you are right. If Julie is right, I just threw a 4-year relationship under the bus in 2 weeks. Comment 2. So what's your reason for sleeping with your ex's good friend weeks after the breakup? It's understandable you wanted to move on, but why her? OP, I was not planning on it. But she just stayed back after the party and things happened. Did I feel guilty after that? Yes. I felt discarded and unwanted after a 4-year relationship and was not thinking straight. Update 1, I, 28. Posted last week regarding my girlfriend Julie, 29, accusing her friend and co-worker Mindy, 28, of sabotaging our relationship. Julie broke up with me in December after a 4-year relationship and Mindy reached out to me when I was feeling down. However, when Julie realized Mindy was talking to me, she confronted both of us last Sunday morning and told me that Mindy manipulated her to break up with me. The worst part was I was not thinking straight after the breakup and ended up hooking up with Mindy after a New Year's party. After the incident I asked Mindy if I needed some time and did not meet her. Since then I made the following post on Reddit and had 3,000 people call me an idiot. I am sorry for the long post, but I wanted to say that we were not idiots to not see what happened. You guys read an abridged version of events in 5 minutes, while we lived it for the last 7 months. I messaged Julie every day since then, to try and talk to her. She did not reply to my messages. I was not sure if she blocked me. Mindy was constantly trying to message me, asking if we could meet and talk about it. On Wednesday, one day after posting, I decided to message Mindy. I told her to tell me everything she said to Julie truthfully. I told her I would go and see if I found out that she was lying. Mindy wanted to meet me in person or talk to me on the phone, but I wanted everything in writing. She messaged me that Julie always said good things about me for all these years. When Julie told her about us talking about getting married in 2024, she was happy for both of us. However, Julie started telling her that she had cold feet and was not sure if she wanted to marry me because of issues she observed about her parents' marriage. One day Julie told her she wanted to take a break from me. She was not sure about her true feelings for me. That was the time Mindy told me about Julie's behavior as she felt bad for me, as we were already telling our families about the engagement plans. After our fight, she said that Julie was extremely upset and told Mindy that she would never marry me. She said that the only reason Julie came back was when she heard that I was moving on as she is jealous of us. She also said that I was a good guy, and hopefully, I see that what we have is something special. I just said okay and told her I needed time. I kept on messaging Julie once a day to at least talk to her once. It was heartbreaking to think that she may have blocked me and may never talk to me again. On Friday afternoon, Julie finally replied. She said she wanted to meet me and told me she would come to our apartment on Saturday afternoon. I cleaned the place up and was just feeling deep guilt from inside before facing her. When she came in, she looked like a shell of herself and completely broken. I sat on our sofa, but she chose to sit away from me. We asked how we both were, but it was clear that none of us were doing well. I started apologizing, but she stopped me. She asked me to let her finish and not to interrupt her. She had brought her little notebook and had written down things she wanted to say to me. She told me that she truly loved me. But after we discussed getting married, she started feeling scared of the next big step. She thought those feelings were normal and would go away. So she decided to not discuss her concerns with me. It kept on eating her from inside and she made a mistake to talk to Mindy about them. She said that she wanted to say everything to me now, so I don't get secondhand information about why she was distant and broke up with me. She said that her parents had a very rocky marriage, though they were together until her mom passed away in 2021 during the pandemic. Her parents argued constantly, and she always thought her mom did not love her dad. However, her mom was extremely dependent on him for everything, and her dad knew it and hence didn't treat her well. She never wanted to be like her mom after the marriage. However, as we lived together, she started seeing some of those issues in our relationship. For example, when we met, Julie had a lot of credit card debt and was bad at managing her money. I helped her with that. Even though we have separate finances, I ended up managing all her finances, investments, etc. At her request, to the point that she did not know or understand where her money exactly was. She also said that we always enjoy making nice meals for dinner every day. However, whenever I work late, she completely loses any motivation to cook and ends up eating cheese and crackers like a toddler for dinner. She also complained that in the last 4 years of our relationship, I have never said no to her for buying anything. She feels that I coddle her, and she just got comfortable with all the luxuries and things I can provide for her. She talked about this with Mindy, and while Mindy initially just listened to her, she told her around September that one of her cousins also had the same issue. She decided to stay away from her fiancé for a month, and within a week, she realized how much she missed him and never had doubts again. When Julie asked for a break, all she wanted to do was to live with her best friend for a few weeks, to see if she was just too codependent on me. She knew I was planning to propose during our Christmas trip to my parents' house, and when I told her that she could not take a break, she just freaked out and broke up with me, as she did not want to be engaged without knowing for sure that we won't end up like her parents. After this, she asked me when I started meeting Mindy, and how many times we met. I opened my chat messages with Mindy and handed her the phone. I told her I met Mindy only once in September, where she told me that Julie wanted to break up with me because she was not happy with our relationship. I already had noticed Julie's distant behavior, and when I asked her, the only answer I got was, "I am fine, we are fine." Due to my insecurities, I tried to hold on to Julie and started coddling her more, planning more expensive dates, and trying to spend more time at home. When Julie asked me for a break and to stay away from me for a few weeks, I thought that was the final step before the breakup and broke down and fought with her, which led to our breakup and her moving out. At this point, Julie's voice started cracking up. She asked me when Mindy contacted you after the breakup. I pointed her to the messages. Mindy initially just started sending me memes to cheer me up, and I just used to respond with thanks, or a thumbs up. However, the messages started getting more frequent and she offered to talk to me in case I needed help. She asked me what I was doing for Christmas and New Year's, and when I told her I was inviting a few friends, she told me that she does not have any plans for New Year's, and I invited her. Julie stopped me there. She told me she did not need to hear the details after that. She told me that when she moved out of our house after our fight, she thought she was just not ready to get married to me. She stayed with her friend for 2 weeks and then got her new apartment in January. She told me that she was miserable and missed me badly. It became more acute when she moved into the apartment alone and could not stay there for even one night. Her best friend is currently staying with her in the new apartment. She realized she could not live without me within a week of living there. When she asked one of our mutual friends, on Saturday, about how I was doing, she told her about the party and told her Mindy was there. It did not make sense to her why Mindy would be at the party. She concluded that Mindy and I were having an affair during our relationship, and that was the reason Mindy must have tried to break us apart, by constantly telling her that she should not get married if she had doubts. When she saw Mindy in our apartment on Sunday, she completely broke down. However, when she learned that Mindy was also talking to me and telling me the opposite things, she realized how naive she was to throw everything away without properly talking to me first. As hurt as she is seeing me with Mindy, she also does not want to lose me. She kept on calling herself an idiot and apologizing for not telling her concerns to me sooner. I sat next to her and tried to hug her, but she moved away. She asked me if I was willing to still be together, and I told her I would give anything to get her back. She told me she was also willing to forget what happened, but she had a few conditions. Her first condition was that I cut contact with Mindy. I block her everywhere and never contact her again. If I see her standing in front of me, I act as if she is invisible. I was okay with that. Secondly, she has already signed up for individual therapy and is on the wait list. She wants us to do couples therapy so that we can talk about all the concerns we have and work through them. We also decided to hold off our engagement or marriage until we both can get into couples therapy. I was also okay with that too. Finally, she wanted me to forget the last month as a bad nightmare and never talk about it again. And if I ever make a "we were on a break" joke, she will punch me in the face. This was the first time we both smiled. I asked her what she was going to do about Mindy as they worked together. She said the biggest punishment for Mindy is to know that she did not succeed in breaking us up. She wants Mindy to see how happy she is with me. She wants Mindy to be there when she flaunts her engagement ring in the office and gets jealous when we get married. We hugged and I felt so relieved that I had a chance to make things right for her. I asked her to stay and she agreed. The rest of the evening was nice. We ordered DoorDash and watched reruns of Top Chef while cuddling on our couch. In the morning, we discussed moving back together. I want her to move back to our old apartment, but she wants a fresh start and asked me if I'm willing to move into her new apartment. Her new apartment is tiny compared to our current apartment and also not in the best neighborhood, but we will talk about it more and decide. I also will have to deal with the issue of having two 12-month leases, and how to get out of one of them. Currently, Julie went to her apartment after lunch to get some of her stuff for the week and I am writing this post. I am just so lucky that I did not lose Julie despite my terrible actions during the last month. I just hope that I will be able to work things out and get married soon, and this whole incident is a small bump in our perfect relationship. I also don't know how to address the issue where she feels coddled by my behavior and feels like I'm making her codependent on me. It's just my personality and I need to work on that during couples therapy. However, any tips from you guys are welcome on how to make her feel less codependent. P.S. Thanks to everyone who checked on my health during the last few days via direct messages, and sent me numbers for helplines. Don't worry, I am a marathon runner, and don't give up that easily. Relevant comments. Comment 1. So what happened to Mindy? OP, no idea. As far as I'm concerned, she does not exist. Comment 2. So it was Mindy who suggested to Julie to take the break? OP, yes. Mindy told Julie that she should take a break, and at the same time told me Julie wanted to break up with me because she was unhappy with me. I thought a break meant she wanted to move away and I would never see her again if I said yes. Comment 3. I don't know how you can make someone who can't even stay alone in their apartment less codependent. She needs her own therapist to make that happen, or she will again blame you for making her that way. OP, yes, she is looking for one right now. I have been in therapy and it takes time to find the right therapist that helps you. At least now we have discussed the issue, so it will be easier for us to see the signs and work on them together. New update. I wrote a few posts 6 months ago regarding breaking up with my then fiancée Julie because she asked me for a break and then hooking up with her friend Mindy. It turned out that Mindy was the one who encouraged Julie to ask me for a break and also befriended me and told me about Julie's intentions in advance. They were the worst few weeks of my life, but Julie and I reconciled and got back together. A lot of you have been asking me for an update, and I feel this is a good time to give a final update. After the incident, Julie told me that she wants to get back together and forget about the whole thing, but I could see that she was still hurt by my behavior. I tried to not love bomb her and give her space, as that was the reason why we broke up in the first place. Julie had a mental breakdown and had a panic attack during the week after she saw Mindy with me in our apartment. She got an online therapist who she still sees once a week. We also looked for couples counseling and were able to see one almost a month after the incident. We decided to put our plans for marriage on hold until then. I could feel that Julie was making a lot of effort to act normally, but something was not right. I was optimistic about us, but it was hard to see her suffer because of my actions. During our first couples counseling session, we both opened up about our relationship and talked about the incident. Julie apologized to me for not communicating what was in her mind and how bad she felt for putting me through all the drama. She told me that she did not know how to process her thoughts and did not want to unload all her negative feelings on me and panicked in the moment. I also apologized to her about everything, and at one point we were in competition on who gets to take a bigger blame for what happened. There were a lot of tears, and I found the experience very healing. The counselor told us that she could see how much we love each other and should take baby steps towards talking to each other about what is in our mind. She gave us some exercises to do after going home and discussing certain things. By the time we left her office, I was so sure that I wanted to spend my life with Julie. I told her that, and she also said that she cannot imagine a life without me. We decided to go ahead with our wedding plans. Mindy tried to contact me several times. She messaged me, but Julie blocked her on my phone and all socials. She also contacted Julie and sent some nasty messages to her. The worst was 15 days after the incident, when Mindy started posting pictures of me and her on Instagram every day. Some of those photos were intimate, non-nude, and it caused a lot of pain to Julie. Julie reported her to HR and got a transfer and promotion to a different department after a month. The last I heard from Mindy was when she sent me a long email on my work email, but I deleted it without reading. The photos Mindy posted did cause a lot of drama, and we had to explain to our parents and friends about what happened during that time. As you all may have guessed, I was unanimously nominated for the Idiot of the Year award, but I am sure my sister would give me a good run for it before the year ends. The whole issue lasted for a month, and then we never heard from Mindy again and just moved on with our lives. Julie has been talking to her therapist about her codependency issues and concerns. I think it's childhood trauma, and the therapist feels that it might have amplified after her mother's sudden death. I have been trying to help Julie slowly take interest in our finances, recommend Ramit Sethi podcast, but she is allergic to money talks and always changes the subject. I was able to break the lease that Julie signed by paying some penalty, and we stayed in our old apartment. However, Julie wanted to move out of it as soon as possible because of the bad memories. We purchased a single-family home a few months ago in a nice suburb and moved there in May. I don't think that issue of codependency is resolved and probably may have increased after the incident, but I love her, will always be there for her when she needs me. On to the main update. Julie and I got married last Saturday in a nice intimate ceremony held at my father's country club. All our family and friends were present, and I could not have asked for a better evening. I wish I could share photos of Julie in her wedding dress because she looked stunning. We plan to leave for our honeymoon next week, and I could not have been happier about how things turned out. Hopefully, in 25 years, Julie and I would look back at this incident as a small blip in our perfect life. Relevant comments. Comment 1, looks like a happy update after all. Make sure to keep communicating about any issues either of you might have, and don't be afraid to go back to counseling if it's needed. OP, thanks. We did attend couples counseling for 2 more sessions, and it was good to talk through our expectations about each other. I know not everyone needs it, but would highly recommend it to any couple getting married. Comment 2, I'm sorry, how are you the idiot for her leaving you because her BFF got into her head? Also, how is your sister trying to take away your championship belt? OP, I feel like an idiot because I should have taken some time before moving on to the next girl willing to be with me. Julie and I were in a relationship for 4 years and I almost threw everything away in 15 days. I feel if you read the first post in isolation and the 3K plus comments, you would also see why I am an idiot here. My sister is a goofball. I am sure she will do something more stupid before the end of the year. There is no way in hell I will win that title when she is around.